There is a particular quiet that arrives only when you have spent a long time being explained, interpreted, answered, and gently reshaped into something easier for others to hold. It is the quiet of a feeling that has tried and tried to find a name and has begun to wonder whether being heard at all might be a kind of country you can no longer travel to. You did not come here for a lesson. You did not come here for a remedy. You did not come here to be told what any of this means. Tonight, there is no solution being offered, no unraveling of what has happened, no careful explanation of why your week has felt this way. There is only company. There is only a voice that has agreed in advance not to ask anything of you. Somewhere on the other side of the window, the rain is moving without hurry, and a small lamp is glowing behind the glass, warm against the surrounding dark, asking nothing of the night, asking nothing of itself. It does not need to brighten the whole street. It does not need to explain its small circle of light. It simply rests, and the night rests around it. You are allowed, if you wish, to be like that lamp for a while. Not bright, not useful, only here, only warm, only allowed. Between one quiet breath and the next, the room becomes just a little softer, as though the silence itself has found a comfortable place to rest. The shape of your body against the bed becomes a little easier to feel, and the weight you have been carrying all day becomes, for a moment, something the mattress is willing to carry for you. Welcome back to Starlit, where nothing has to be solved before it can be gently held, and where even the heaviest thoughts are allowed to become lighter simply by no longer being carried alone. Outside, the night continues without urgency. Inside, there is only the steady companionship of a voice willing to remain beside whatever has followed you into this hour, without needing to fix it, without needing to name it, without needing it to be anything other than what it is. Some loneliness comes not from being alone, but from feeling unseen while standing in plain sight. It is a quieter kind of ache than the loneliness people warn you about. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with a closed door or an empty room. It arrives in conversations where you are technically present, technically smiling, technically holding a cup of something warm, and somehow no part of you has actually reached the other person. You know this feeling. We all know it, in our own different ways. The dinner where someone asks how you are and is already half listening before the second word leaves your mouth. The message where what you meant is gently rewritten into something more convenient. The quiet evening where someone close to you nods kindly at what you said, and you feel, with a small soft thud beneath the ribs, that they have not actually heard you. They have heard around you. They have heard near you. They have not heard you. It is not their fault most of the time. People are tired. People are busy with their own unspoken weather. The world has trained almost everyone to listen for the next thing they will say, rather than for the small thing you almost did not say. And so the ache is rarely about any one person. It is about the slow accumulation of small unhearings, the way a coat grows heavier in the rain, not from one drop, but from many. You may not have noticed when it began. These things rarely arrive with a clear edge. There was simply a season in which you stopped trying quite so hard to be understood, because trying had begun to cost more than it returned. You learned to soften the truer parts. You learned to round the edges of what you felt so that what you offered would fit more easily into another person's day. You learned, perhaps without realizing, to make yourself a little smaller in the places where you used to be most yourself. And the strange thing about that smallness is that no one really sees it happen. From the outside, you still look like you. You still answer the questions. You still bring the food, still send the message, still smile at the right moments. Only you know that something underneath has been quietly folded down, made portable, made bearable. Only you know how much of you has begun to live in a room no one else has ever walked into. There is nothing here, in this hour, that needs to be held quite so tightly anymore. Not the conversation that did not go the way you wanted. Not the sentence you replayed in your head on the way home. Not the small disappointment you swallowed so smoothly that no one even noticed it pass. The grip with which you have been holding all of that can begin, here, to loosen. Not because the situation has changed. Not because anyone has come back to apologize. Simply because for the next while there is no one here who needs you to keep holding it for them. The lamp behind the rain-softened window continues to glow. The rain continues without explanation. The room around you continues without any need from you to be a room. The pillow beneath your head does not ask you to be interesting tonight. The blanket over your shoulders does not need you to make sense. None of the small, steady things around you require that you be anyone in particular right now. If your jaw has been clenched without you noticing, it is allowed to soften. If your shoulders have been climbing slowly toward your ears across the long hours of the day, they are allowed to come back down. If the back of your throat has been holding the shape of something you did not say, that shape is allowed to dissolve slowly into the warm dark of the room. There is no one here to perform for. There is no one here to translate yourself for. There is only the soft work of letting your body remember that it does not have to brace. We are going to spend the next while together in a very small space. Just the bed, the room, the rain, the lamp, and the steady company of a voice that will not ask you to explain anything. Not even to yourself. Especially not to yourself. The part of you that has been quietly translating your own feelings into a more acceptable shape can rest. Tonight there is nothing that has to be made acceptable. There is nothing that has to be made readable. There is nothing that has to be made useful. If a feeling rises while you listen, it is allowed to rise. If a feeling fades, it is allowed to fade. If you drift in and out of the words, that is not a failure of attention. That is the body doing exactly what it came here to do. The point of these hours is not to follow every sentence. The point is to let the sentences be a kind of weather you are resting beneath. You are not being tested. You are not being studied. You are simply being kept company. Somewhere beneath every unanswered feeling, another quieter truth has been waiting. The truth beneath the ache of not being heard is rarely a complicated one. It is usually just this. Somewhere along the way, you began to spend a great deal of effort trying to make yourself understood, and somewhere along the way, that effort began to outweigh what came back. And the body knows this, even when the mind does not yet have words for it. The body knows the difference between a conversation that returns to you and a conversation that only drains out of you. The body keeps a quiet ledger of these small balances, and after a long enough season of them, the body begins to feel a particular kind of tired that no amount of sleep alone can dissolve. It is the tiredness of having tried to be legible, the tiredness of having translated yourself again and again from your own language into someone else's, the tiredness of carrying the responsibility somewhere in the lower throat for whether or not what you said landed, the tiredness of being your own translator, your own editor, your own gentle apologist, all at once, across so many small exchanges that you have stopped counting. Simone Weil, who wrote in a thin, steady hand about the strange way attention is itself a kind of love, said once that the rarest and purest form of generosity is to truly listen to another. She did not mean polite listening. She did not mean the listening that waits for its turn. She meant the listening that empties itself out so that the other person can briefly fill the room with what they actually mean. And she understood very clearly that almost no one receives that kind of listening more than a handful of times in a lifetime. Most of us live our whole lives standing at the edge of it, watching for it, hoping for it, and giving more of it than we ever quite receive. If you have felt lately like a person who gives a great deal of careful listening and receives only a small portion back, that is not a flaw in your perception. That is simply the shape of how most listening actually happens in the world. People mean well. They love you. They are also tired, also distracted, also carrying their own unsaid things. The shortage is not personal, but the ache of it can be very personal, especially in the small hours when the day's accounts come due and the body finally has the room to feel what it has been carrying. The hidden exhaustion of explaining yourself does not look like exhaustion from the outside. It looks like competence. It looks like patience. It looks like a person who can be relied upon to soften their own meaning if necessary, who can be counted on to find a different way to say what they meant, who can be trusted to add the extra sentence, the clarifying note, the small disarming phrase that keeps the conversation gentle. From outside, this looks like grace. From inside, it can begin, after long enough, to feel like a slow erasure. You have probably done this so often that you no longer notice the moments when you are doing it. The pause before you speak in which you choose the simpler version of what you meant. The small laugh you add to a sentence that was actually quite serious so that the other person will not feel weighed down. The way you let the conversation move on when you almost said something more honest, because the timing felt wrong, because the room was not quite ready, because the other person was already half elsewhere. These are small acts. None of them is large enough to be worth mentioning, but there are so many of them across so many days that together they begin to weigh something. There is a difference between being answered and being heard, and the difference is one of the quietest, most important things a person can learn to feel. Being answered means that someone has received the surface of what you said and given you a response that addresses the surface. Being heard means that someone has reached gently beneath the surface and stayed there for a moment without rushing to do anything about it. Most of what we receive in the world is the first. The second is rarer, and the lack of it leaves a particular kind of mark. You have been answered many times. You have been advised. You have been redirected. You have been gently corrected. You have been told what the situation must be like by people who were not in the situation. You have been told what you must be feeling by people who had decided in advance what feeling would be most convenient. You have been told kindly that what you were experiencing was probably not as bad as it felt, and you have been told also kindly that what you were experiencing was probably worse than it felt, and you should do something about it. None of these is bad on its own. All of them, accumulated, are a kind of weather that wears a person down. What you have not always received is the simple, almost still response that says only, without urgency, I hear you. Without the next sentence trying to solve it. Without the next sentence trying to reframe it. Without the next sentence trying to relate it back to the listener's own life. Just the small, steady acknowledgement that what you said landed somewhere, and that what landed was you, not a problem to be tidied. If your chest tightens a little at the thought of that, that is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that some quieter part of you has been waiting a long time to be met that way, and has not yet been. The chest knows when it has been holding a hope it could not say out loud. The chest is allowed here to release a portion of that hope into the room, not to give it up, just to set it down for a while. You are not going to lose anything by setting it down. The hope of being heard does not disappear when you let go of it for a few hours. It is not a kite that will fly away if your hand opens. It is more like a small warm stone in your pocket. You can put it on the bedside table for the night. It will still be there in a later hour, but you do not need to carry it through these hours. You do not need to carry it through any of this. The slow release of breath from your chest, if you notice it happening, is the body taking back a little of the room that the day asked it to give up. There is no special way you have to do this. You do not have to make the breath longer. You do not have to count anything. You only have to let the breath be the breath, and let the body, which has been making decisions about your safety all day without consulting you, finally rest from those decisions for a while. The third thing beneath the ache, the quietest of the three, is the loneliness of carrying unspoken meanings. This is the loneliness that is most easily missed, even by yourself, because it does not look like loneliness from the outside. It is not the loneliness of a missing person. It is the loneliness of a missing version of yourself in the rooms where you spend your days. The version of you that knows what you actually meant. The version of you that remembers the original sentence before you softened it. The version of you that holds, somewhere quiet, the whole shape of what you were trying to say before it was edited down for company. That version of you is not gone. It is simply waiting in a room that other people have not been invited into. And sometimes, in the small hours, that version of you taps very gently on the wall just to remind you that it is still there. You may have felt that tapping tonight before you came here. A small unrest, a sense that something you almost said is still circling the room of your chest. A feeling that the day did not quite let you finish a sentence that started somewhere behind your ribs. That feeling is not asking to be solved. It is only asking to be acknowledged, even silently, even just by lying here and not pretending it isn't there. The body softens sometimes, simply because the inside of the body has been told, without words, that someone is sitting near it and not turning away. That is a thing that does not have to be explained to the nervous system. The nervous system understands company before it understands language. The nervous system has been listening all your life for the sound of someone near who is not going to leave the moment the room becomes uncomfortable. This room is not going to become uncomfortable. The voice in this room is not going to leave when what you feel gets a little harder to look at. The voice in this room is not going anywhere. It is simply here, near the edge of your bed. In a chair, it will not move, for as long as you need to be in the company of something that is not asking anything of you. If your shoulders have lowered, even by a small amount, while these sentences have been moving past, that is not a result you produced. That is a result your body produced on its own, without your supervision, the moment it understood that it was finally somewhere it could let down. You do not have to do anything to keep that lowering happening. You only have to allow it to continue, which is another way of saying you only have to not interfere with it. The pillow is being a pillow. The blanket is being a blanket. The lamp behind the rain-softened window, somewhere in the imagination of the room, is being a lamp, asking nothing of the dark, accepted by the dark without question. You are being you, and you are also being allowed here to be a little less than you usually have to be, a little less articulate, a little less ready, a little less prepared to be useful to anyone. Somewhere beneath every unanswered feeling, another quieter truth has been waiting, and that quieter truth is rarely the thing you tried to say. It is more often the small, still thing underneath the trying, the wish behind the words, the hope behind the explanation, the simple, almost embarrassing want to be met without being processed by someone who is not in a hurry. That want is not childish. That want is not too much. That want is older than any of us, and it has been alive in human chests since long before any of us were given language. It is one of the oldest weathers a person can carry, and it is allowed in this room to exist exactly as it is, without needing to be smaller, without needing to be wiser, without needing to be braver than it actually feels. We are going to keep moving slowly. There is no part of this hour that has to be hurried. The night outside has nowhere to be. The rain has nowhere to be. The lamp behind the window has nowhere to be. And neither, for the next while, do you. Even the clearest water eventually releases its reflection back into the night. There is more to be said about this, in the way that there is always more to be said when the inside of a person finally has the room to feel itself. The hidden exhaustion we were speaking of, the slow tiredness of being a person who has to keep being legible, has many small components, and you do not need to count them all. But the body sometimes settles further when each of them is gently acknowledged in passing. There is, for example, the exhaustion of having to choose your words. This is not the exhaustion of finding the right words. That is its own thing, and a quieter thing. The exhaustion of having to choose your words is the constant low-grade work of editing yourself in real time, sentence by sentence, so that what comes out of your mouth will not require too much from the person across from you. You have been doing this work since you were small. It has become so automatic that you do not feel it as work anymore. You only feel it as a kind of background tiredness, a small mental weight that never quite goes away while you are around other people. You are not around other people right now. There is no editing being asked of you. There is no need to choose your words. There are no words coming out of you at all. In fact, the voice in the room is doing all the talking. The voice in the room has the easy job of being a voice. You have the easier job of being a person who is listening, which is not really a job at all because no one is checking whether you are listening and no one will be disappointed if you stop. There is the exhaustion also of holding small unmet wishes. You have been carrying a few of these lately perhaps. The wish that a certain person had asked a follow-up question. The wish that a certain message had received a fuller reply. The wish that someone, somewhere, had noticed the moment when you almost said something true and had leaned in a little, instead of letting it pass. None of these wishes is dramatic. None of them would feel important enough in the daylight to mention to anyone. But they are present in you, the way small stones can be present in the pocket of a coat, and each one adds a tiny bit of weight to how you walk through the day. You are not walking through the day right now. The coat is hung up. The small stones are still in the pocket, perhaps, but the pocket is no longer on your body. The pocket is across the room. The stones are not, at this moment, weighing on anything. They are sitting quietly in the cloth of the coat, in the dark of the room, while you rest. They will still be there later if you want to check on them. They are not going anywhere, but for now, they are not yours to carry because you have set the coat down. There is the exhaustion of having to keep your face composed. This one, perhaps, is the quietest of all, because most people do not realize how much effort they spend on it. The face has many small muscles, and most of them are working all day to keep your expression appropriate to whatever situation you are in. Even when you are alone in your own kitchen, even when you are walking by yourself down a quiet street, the face often remains slightly composed because the face has learned that it might be seen at any moment, and the face has decided long ago that being seen unprepared is not safe. Your face is unprepared right now, and it is safe. The face can stop holding the shape it has been holding. The cheeks can soften. The corners of the mouth can return to the position they take when no one is looking. The skin around the eyes can rest. The forehead can lower almost imperceptibly. The small, constant management of the face can simply stop, and what remains is the face you have when you are alone with yourself and not even trying to look at yourself. That face has been there underneath all the other faces all day, and it is allowed here to be the only face. If you happen to be lying on your side, the side of your face that is pressed into the pillow is being very gently held by the cloth and the fill of the pillow. This is one of the most basic kindnesses the world offers to a person. The pillow does not ask anything of the face. The pillow does not care what expression the face is making. The pillow simply receives the weight of the head and gives back in its own quiet way the support the head needs to be at rest. The pillow has been doing this for many nights of your life. The pillow is good at it. If you happen to be lying on your back, the back of your head is being held by the pillow with the same simple kindness. The pillow does not need to be told how to do this. The pillow has the small, slow patience of a stone in a river. The pillow has by now made a small shape for the back of your head, and your head fits into that shape without effort. There is no work to be done. The pillow has already done it. There is the exhaustion also of being available. This is a quieter exhaustion than the others. It is the exhaustion of having lived for many years with the small, constant knowledge that someone might need something from you at any time. The message that might come in, The call that might require a quick answer. The person nearby who might turn and need a small piece of your attention. The unspoken expectation that you are, on some level, on call, even when no one is actively asking anything of you. You are not on call right now. The room is not on call. The voice is not on call. The night around the house is not on call. The whole arrangement of these hours is unavailable to everyone except you, and you yourself are not asking anything of it. You are simply inside it. You are simply being lived by it. There is no message that will reach you that the night cannot quietly absorb. There is no need that will arrive at the bed that the dark cannot gently set aside for these hours. The phone, if it is somewhere nearby, has agreed to be quiet for the duration of this hour. You do not have to confirm this. You do not have to check on it. The phone is doing the work of being a small, dark object. The phone is not your problem right now. The phone has always been more of a doorway than a thing, and the doorway, for these hours, is closed. We were also speaking of being heard, and the difference between being heard and being answered. The slowness of that distinction in your body, even now, has its own value, because the body knows something that the mind sometimes forgets. The body knows when it has been received. The body does not need a record of the conversation. The body does not need a transcript. The body simply notices somewhere in the chest when the other person has actually arrived in the room of the moment, rather than standing at the edge of it preparing the next sentence. You have known a few people, perhaps, who could actually arrive in the room of a moment. Not many. Most of us do not get many of these in a lifetime. But you may have known one or two. A grandparent who paused before responding in a way that made you feel the pause was a kind of welcome. A friend, very young perhaps, who simply looked at you across a kitchen table for a second too long, in the way that small children do before saying anything back. A teacher, somewhere along the way, who let the silence after your question be its own answer for a moment, before offering a verbal one. Those moments, when they happen to you, are still in you. The body does not forget being properly received. The body keeps a quiet archive of those moments, and the archive is what your nervous system reaches for, sometimes, when it is searching for what safety actually feels like. You may not remember those moments consciously. You do not need to. The body has remembered them on your behalf. The body is using them right now, perhaps, as the template for what is happening in this room. The voice in this room is not as warm as a grandparent at a kitchen table. The voice in this room is not as small and direct as a child. The voice in this room is not as practiced as a teacher who knew how to hold a question. The voice in this room is none of those things in particular. But the voice in this room has agreed to do one thing they all did, which is to not rush. The voice in this room has agreed to leave space around what it says. The voice in this room has agreed to act as if there were nothing else in the world that needed attention more than this. That agreement is what allows the room to feel the way it feels. That agreement is what allows the body to soften the way it is softening. That agreement is what allows you, in these slow minutes, to feel that you are being received, even though no one knows anything about you. The reception is not about content. The reception is about pace. The reception is about a willingness to be slower than is usually allowed in a day. The day is usually faster than the inside of a person can comfortably move. The day is built for the quick exchange, the brief reply, the short loop of question and answer. The inside of you, however, moves more slowly than that. The inside of you needs more silence around its sentences than the day permits. The inside of you needs longer pauses than most conversations contain. And when the inside of you finally lands in a place where the pauses are long enough, the inside of you exhales in a way that nothing in the daytime ever quite allows. You may have already exhaled in that deeper way several times tonight without noticing. Each time a small portion of what you were carrying has stepped down. Each time a small piece of the day has finished. Each time the body has come closer to the kind of rest it has been waiting for since the day began. None of this has been work. All of it has been simply the result of being in a place where there is enough silence around the words. We were also speaking of the loneliness of carrying unspoken meanings, the small private weather inside you that has not yet been shared with anyone. The way this loneliness can quietly accumulate, sentence by unspoken sentence, until the inside of you has become a place no one has visited in a long time. We were not going to solve this. We are still not going to solve this, but we can sit beside it for a while longer, in the way the room is sitting beside you. The unspoken meanings are not a burden exactly. They are more like quiet companions. They have been with you through the day. They have been with you through the week. They have been with you, in some form, through years of your life. They know you better than most people do, because they are made of the parts of you that no one else has been allowed to see. They are, in a strange way, on your side, even though they sometimes ache. You do not have to speak them tonight. You do not have to give them words. You do not have to try, even silently, to translate them into a shape that someone else could understand. They are allowed to remain in their original language, which is not a verbal language. They are allowed to be what they are in the soft, dark room of the inside of you while you rest. They are not going anywhere. They will still be with you later in their same untranslated form, and that is fine. They have always been with you. They have never been a problem. They are part of how you have managed to be a person who feels things deeply in a world that often does not have time for deep feeling. The shoulders, the place where they meet the neck, the small soft spot just behind the ear where tension sometimes gathers, may have all become quieter without your supervision. You can verify this in a small way if you want, by simply noticing whether each of those places feels the same as it did when you started listening. Most likely, they do not. Most likely, the shoulders are lower. Most likely, the neck is softer. Most likely, the place behind the ear is no longer holding anything in particular. You did not have to do anything for those places. They have responded to the room around them. They have responded to the voice. They have responded to the fact that no further demand was being placed on them. The shoulders, when nothing is being asked of them, almost always come down. The neck, when nothing is being asked of it, almost always softens. The place behind the ear, when nothing is being asked of it, almost always quiets. These are reliable behaviors. The body has been doing them for as long as you have had a body. The breath, similarly, has been doing its work without your guidance. You have not had to time the breath. You have not had to deepen the breath. You have not had to count the breath. The breath has simply been the breath, and the breath has been very slowly, very steadily becoming the kind of breath that bodies have right before sleep. That kind of breath has its own particular shape. It is not the breath of effort. It is not the breath of attention. It is the breath of forgetting, in a kind way, that you are breathing at all. Somewhere beneath every unanswered feeling, another quieter truth has been waiting, and that quieter truth is becoming, slowly, less important to identify. The truth is allowed to remain quiet. The truth is allowed to remain beneath. The truth does not have to surface tonight. The truth is doing what truths do when they are not being demanded of, which is to rest in their own place until the day on which they choose to be visible again. They will choose. They have always chosen. They do not need your help. You can rest in the company of the unsurfaced truth. The unsurfaced truth is, in some quiet sense, the most honest companionship you have. It knows everything about you. It has never asked you to perform. It has never required your composure. It has been with you the whole time, beneath every conversation, beneath every meal, beneath every brief small interaction in a checkout line or on a sidewalk. It is one of the most loyal things about you. And it is here, with you in the bed, doing what it has always done, which is to remain present without needing anything in return. There is a kind of room that has never existed for you in the way you wanted it to, and you have learned, over time, to stop expecting it. A room in which the conversation does not race ahead. A room in which your half-sentence is allowed to remain a half-sentence for as long as it needs to. A room in which someone has gathered themselves quietly enough to be the still pool that your meaning can fall into without scattering. You may not have been able to name this room. Most people cannot. But the body has known the shape of it for a very long time, because the body has been waiting for it. Tonight, for whatever number of minutes you remain awake, this can be that room. Not because it has been built especially for you, but because no other room is being built around you right now. And so this one, the one you are already inside, is allowed to become quieter, more permeable, more willing to listen than the rooms of your day. Imagine, if it comes easily, a perfectly still lake at night. The moon is somewhere above it, not announcing itself, simply existing the way the moon does. The lake is so still that the moonlight is not just reflecting from its surface. The lake is holding the moon. There is no wind, there is no ripple, there is no eagerness in the water to do anything with the light it has been given. It is simply allowing the light to be there, and in that simple allowing, the light becomes more itself than it was up in the sky. That is what it feels like to be heard, not analyzed, not improved upon, not redirected, just held, the way still water holds a sky. And the quiet grief of not having had enough of that over a long enough time is the grief you may have brought with you into the bed in these hours, even if you did not know you were carrying it. It is not a sharp grief. It is the slow kind. It does not demand much. It only shows up sometimes as a small heaviness in the chest in the late hours, as a difficulty falling asleep, as a feeling that something inside has not yet finished its day. Rainer Maria Rilke, who knew how to be alone in a way that did not break a person, wrote that love consists in this, that two solitudes protect and border and salute each other. He did not say that love is the merging of two people into one explainable thing. He did not say that love is being perfectly understood. He said love is the careful guarding of each other's solitude, the gentle saluting across the small distance that any two inner lives must keep between them. And to be heard is something like that. It is the small bow across the distance. It is the small look that says, I see that you have your own weather over there. I will not pretend to know it. I will not try to bring it into mine. Most of what is offered to us in place of that small bow is something else. It is the offer to bring our weather into someone else's, to be understood in their terms, to be loved in their language. That offer is real and often kind. It is not what we are speaking of here. We are speaking of the rarer thing, the thing that does not absorb you into the listener, the thing that lets you remain yourself while you are being received. If you have spent a long time being absorbed into other people's understandings of you, then a particular kind of grief is allowed to be here in this hour, in this room, without being given a name. The grief of having been loved through someone else's translation of you. The grief of having been cared for in a language that was not quite your own. The grief of having been the person who, in order to receive any closeness at all, agreed to be the version of yourself that was easiest to receive. This grief does not mean that the love was not love. The love was love. The grief and the love can sit in the same room. They often do. That is the strange and tender economy of human closeness. We are loved imperfectly, and we love imperfectly back, and beneath all of it, there is sometimes a small, clear sorrow that no amount of love seems to fully reach. It is the sorrow of not having been seen plainly. It is the sorrow of having been seen instead through the gentle, well-meaning filter of someone else's hope for who you might be. In this hour, there is no filter. There is no hope being placed on you. There is no version of you that is being preferred over another version. There is only the listener you actually are, lying in the actual bed, breathing the actual breath of a body that has been working for you all day. The voice in the room is not trying to find the better version of you. The voice in the room has no preference about which version of you is present. The voice in the room is simply willing to be near whichever version happens to be here. If the version of you that is here this evening is tired, that version is welcome. If the version of you that is here in this slow stretch is a little frayed at the edges, that version is welcome. If the version of you that is here in the slow hours is one you would not particularly want to introduce to anyone, that version is welcome. There is no door policy in this room. There is no minimum standard. There is no one outside who has been told what you ought to look like in order to be allowed in. The chest, when it understands that, sometimes begins to do a thing it does not do very often. It begins to breathe a little wider, not deeper, wider. The breath spreads sideways across the ribs instead of pulling down toward the belly with effort. This is not a technique. This is what the chest does when it is not being watched. It is what the chest does when the room has agreed not to ask it for a performance. If your chest has begun to do that, even slightly, you do not have to take credit for it. You only have to notice, in the smallest way, that the chest is allowed. The chest is allowed to be wider. The chest is allowed to be less guarded. The chest is allowed to not be holding the door of itself anymore. Sometimes the hearts that ache in the late hours ache for a reason that is older than any particular relationship. They ache because they have never quite been mirrored, because there has never been in your life a steady, reliable person who looked at you and gave back without distortion the shape of what you were trying to be. There are people who have come close. There are moments where it almost happened, but the steady mirror, the lifelong mirror, the one a person can lean against when their own sense of themselves wobbles, is something many of us live without and only half know we are missing. To not have been mirrored is not the same as to not have been loved. Many of us were loved deeply by people who could not mirror us. They loved us through the only mirror they themselves had, which was often a small or smudged one. They gave us the love they had in the shape they had it, and it counted. It still counts. And yet the unmirrored places in us continue, sometimes, to ask quietly for what they did not receive. You do not have to do anything about that here this late. You do not have to forgive anyone. You do not have to understand anyone. You do not have to make peace with anything. The room is not asking you to perform reconciliation. The room is asking you to do something much smaller, which is to lie here in the company of these unmirrored places without arguing with them, without explaining them away, without trying to make them into something more bearable than they are. They are bearable already when they are not being argued with. The places in us that ache to have been seen become much quieter the moment we stop trying to convince them that they shouldn't be there. They are not asking for solutions. They are only asking to not be denied. They quiet down on their own the moment the inner argument stops. The lake holds the moon without explaining the moon. The lake does not ask the moon to be a different kind of moon. The lake does not ask the moon to apologize for the night it took to arrive. The lake simply holds whatever light is there, and the light, by being held, becomes a quieter version of itself. You can be the lake. You can be the moon. In the dark, you can be both, because the work of holding and the work of being held are not as different as they sometimes seem. The same stillness allows both. The same patience accommodates both. The same small willingness to not interfere with what is here makes possible both the receiving and the resting. There is no particular order in which any of this has to happen. There is no checklist of feelings to be visited. There is no sequence of soft realizations that you are meant to march through. The room is allowed to be slow. The body is allowed to be slow. The mind is allowed to be slow. And if the mind drifts while the room remains slow, that is not the mind misbehaving. That is the mind doing what minds do when they are finally given the gift of being unimportant for a while. A mind that is not being asked to perform begins to wander, and a wandering mind is much closer to a sleeping mind than a focused mind ever is. So if the words have begun to lose their edges, that is not a failure of listening. That is the very thing we came here for. The words are allowed to become weather. The sentences are allowed to become wind. The meanings are allowed to become moonlight on water. There is a part of being heard that has almost nothing to do with words. It is what happens when another presence in the room is steady enough that you can finally stop monitoring it. So much of daily listening is, secretly, a kind of monitoring. You listen, but you are also half watching to see how the other person is taking what you said. You speak, but you are also half watching to see whether they are still with you. The watching is itself a small, constant labor, and most of us do not realize how much of it we are doing. Here, in this room, there is no one to monitor. The voice will not change because of what you feel. The voice will not become impatient because you are still awake. The voice will not become disappointed because you cannot quite follow. The voice will not become tender in a way that asks for something back. The voice is simply going to keep being the voice. The way the rain on the other side of the window keeps being the rain. The way the lamp keeps being the lamp. The body, when it discovers that there is no monitoring to do, often does something it has been quietly hoping to do for a long time. It puts down the small, constant work of vigilance, not in a sudden release, in a slow, unspectacular settling. The way a coat finally being hung up after a long walk. The way a bag finally being set down by the door. The way a key being placed on the table and the hand that held it opening. You do not have to picture any of those things if they do not arrive on their own. The body knows what to do with the idea of putting something down. The body has done it before. The body remembers how, even when the mind has forgotten. If your breathing has lengthened on its own, without you arranging it, that is the body saying yes. If your jaw has unclenched, even by a small amount, that is the body saying yes. If the space between your eyebrows has loosened, that is the body saying yes. None of these are things you have to keep doing. They are things the body has already decided to do the moment it became safe enough to do them. This room is safe enough. This room is built for the next while entirely out of permission. There is nothing here you must achieve. There is nothing here you must understand. There is nothing here you must remember later. The whole structure of this hour is a structure that lets things go. Whatever you have brought into it is allowed to be set down, picked up later, examined later, or never examined again. The room does not have a preference. The lake does not have a preference. The moon does not have a preference. The night around them does not have a preference. They are simply present together, and the togetherness without any agenda is what makes them beautiful. We are doing something similar, you and I, in this room. We are being together without an agenda. The togetherness without any project attached to it is what makes this hour what it is. Even the clearest water eventually releases its reflection back into the night, and even the most patient mirror is allowed after a long enough day to stop holding the image it has been holding. The night does not ask the lake to keep reflecting forever. At some point, the lake closes its surface in fog, or the wind passes over, or the night simply darkens further, and the reflection softens into nothing, and that is not a loss. That is the lake being allowed to be only itself again. You are allowed here to stop reflecting back the meanings other people have placed on you. You are allowed to let your surface soften. You are allowed to let the reflections you have been carrying through the day drift gently off the water of you into the surrounding dark, where they no longer require your maintenance. The room is dimmer than it was a few sentences ago, not because anything has changed in the room, because the inside of you has shifted by a small degree toward the kind of dimness that comes before sleep. The eyelids are heavier. The line between thinking and not thinking is becoming less precise. The shape of the room around you is becoming a softer, less defined thing. the way a room does in the moments before a candle is finally allowed to go out. The stillness around you is not a thing you have to maintain. The stillness is simply what is here now, in the absence of demand. There has been nothing demanding anything of you for the last several minutes, and the stillness has gathered on its own into the spaces that the demands used to occupy. You did not have to create this stillness. You only had to stop generating the noise that used to fill the room. This is one of the small secret freedoms of these hours. You do not have to make stillness. You only have to allow the noise of the day to settle, and what remains underneath is stillness. It was there the whole time. It was simply being covered by the activity of being a person in the world. Now that the activity has paused, the stillness can be heard, which is to say, it can be felt by the parts of you that quiet down in its presence. The lake holds the moon. The room holds you. The night holds the room. And somewhere behind all of that, there is something even larger and quieter than the night. Something that holds the whole arrangement without effort. The way a deep sky holds whatever weather happens to be moving through it. You do not have to know the name of that larger holding. You only have to know that it is not asking anything of you. It is the holding that has been holding you since long before you were old enough to notice. It has been holding you through every conversation in which you went unheard, through every small swallowed sentence, through every long day of being almost understood and not quite. It has not asked you to explain any of it. It has only continued to hold. The chest, when it senses that larger holding, does a thing that is very small and very old. It softens at the place where it has been bracing against the world. Just a little, just enough that the breath, when it next arrives, has a wider doorway to come through. This is not something you have to do. It is something the chest does when it remembers it is not alone. You are not alone in this room, not in the sense of another person being here, in a quieter sense, in the sense that the room itself has agreed to be on your side, in the sense that the lamp on the other side of the rain-softened window, somewhere in the imagination of the room, is glowing on your behalf without needing to be thanked, in the sense that the night, very large and very patient, has folded itself around this bed without asking the bed to be anything other than a bed. These are not metaphors that you need to remember. They are not images you have to picture clearly. They are simply weather, moving through the room, asking nothing of you, leaving nothing behind. If they help, they help. If they pass without landing, they pass. There is no correct way to be here. Even the clearest water eventually releases its reflection back into the night. The lake is still in the imagination of the room, if you would like it to be. The moon is still resting on the lake's quiet surface. Neither of them is in any hurry. Neither of them is being asked to do anything. They have settled into their old companionship, the way certain old companionships in your own life have settled, the kind where nothing further needs to be discussed for the relationship to continue. There is a thing about still water that not many people sit with for very long. Still water is not empty. Still water is one of the most full things in nature. It holds on its surface the entire sky above it. It holds beneath its surface an entire other world, with its own quiet life moving slowly through the depths. It holds at its edges the small reeds and stones and creatures of the shore. Still water is doing an enormous amount of holding. It just happens to do all of it without making any sound, without any visible effort, without ever needing to be acknowledged. You are like still water at this hour. You are holding a great deal in the soft depths of you. The day's small disappointments, the week's quiet ache, the longer, slower grief of being a person who has sometimes been almost heard and not quite. All of it is held within you. None of it is making any sound because none of it has been asked to. None of it is requiring effort because none of it is being argued with. You are holding everything, and the holding is so quiet that even you can barely tell you are doing it. This is the gift of stillness. Not that the stillness empties you. The stillness allows you to be full without strain. The stillness allows you to be the place where many things live without any of them having to be sorted or processed. The stillness, in fact, is the most spacious form of fullness there is. The opposite of stillness is not fullness. The opposite of stillness is agitation. Agitation is the thing that makes fullness feel unbearable. Without agitation, fullness becomes a kind of quiet wealth, and you have plenty of it. You may not have thought of yourself as wealthy in this way. Most of us do not. We think of our inner lives when we are tired, as cluttered, as overfull, as more than we can manage. But the inner life of a person is not cluttered when it is still. The inner life of a person is, when still, simply a deep pool, with a great deal of life moving slowly through it, none of which has to be managed by the surface. The surface is just the surface. The depths are taking care of themselves. Rilke, who we mentioned earlier, also wrote that we must take our existence as broadly as we can, because everything, even the unheard of, must be possible inside us. He did not mean that we have to like everything. He meant that the inside of a person is large enough to contain even the things we would not have chosen. He meant that there is room inside us for the conversations that did not go well, for the people who did not quite hear us, for the small, private aches that no one else has acknowledged. There is room for all of it, because the inside of a person is bigger than the contents of a person. You may feel the size of the inside of you, faintly, in this moment. The chest has been wider for a while now. The breath has been moving through more space. The shoulders have settled into a position they did not have during the day. The skull has felt lighter on the pillow than it did when you first lay down. All of these are small physical clues to the bigger truth, which is that the inside of you is more spacious than the things it has been holding. The things it has been holding are real. They matter. They are not being dismissed. They are simply not as large as you have been. They never were as large as you have been. They felt large sometimes during the day because the day had no room around them, and the day had no quiet around them, and the day had no permission around them. The things have not grown smaller exactly. The room around them has grown larger, and in the larger room they take up less of the available space. There is a small kindness in noticing this, but you do not have to notice it. The noticing is optional. The largeness is doing its work, whether or not you are tracking it. The largeness is what is allowing the breath to be longer. The largeness is what is allowing the body to settle. The largeness is what is allowing the inside of your mind to drift. You do not have to manage the largeness. You do not even have to know what to call it. You just have to lie inside it, which you are already doing, which is the only thing this hour has ever asked of you. The mind is allowed to drift further now. The mind is allowed to drift in any direction. The mind is allowed to drift toward a memory and away from it. The mind is allowed to drift toward the words and away from them. The mind is allowed to drift toward sleep and away from it, and toward sleep again and away from it, in the small, unsteady way that minds approach sleep when they are still partly awake. None of this is doing anything wrong. The drifting is the work. The drifting is what is happening. The drifting is fine. If, while drifting, the mind returns briefly to the lake, that is fine. If, while drifting, the mind returns briefly to the lamp behind the window, that is fine. If, while drifting, the mind returns briefly to the small chair by the fading candle, that is fine. These images have been good company. They are allowed to return as often as the mind wishes to be in their company. They are also allowed to not return at all. The room does not have a preference. We have been speaking of small kindnesses for a while now. Small kindnesses are perhaps the only kind of kindness that can be done in a room like this. Large kindnesses require declarations. Large kindnesses require gestures. Large kindnesses make a sound. Small kindnesses are quieter. Small kindnesses can happen in the dark without being announced. Small kindnesses can be done by a room, by a voice, by a piece of furniture, by the temperature of the air, by the slight weight of a blanket, by the patience of a wall, by the willingness of a window to remain closed for the night. The room around you is full of small kindnesses. The blanket is being warm at the temperature your body needs. The pillow is being soft at the shape your head fits into. The mattress is being supportive at the points where your weight rests. The walls are being quiet at the volume the inside of you can rest inside of. None of these is being praised. None of these expects to be praised. They are simply doing their small kind work, and the cumulative effect of all of them gathered together is the room that you are in right now. You are surrounded by kindness that does not have to speak. This is one of the most underrated experiences a person can have. Most kindness in the world takes the form of language. Most kindness in the world requires someone to say something. The kindness around you in this room is not requiring anyone to say anything. The kindness is the room. The kindness is the dark. The kindness is the bed itself. The kindness is the simple structural fact that you have been given a place to lie down, and the place is willing to hold you, and there is no further negotiation required. The chest can rest a little more now in the awareness that the kindness around you does not require your participation. You do not have to be kind back. The bed does not need you to be kind to it. The blanket does not need you to be kind to it. The room does not need you to be kind to it. They are doing their work freely, the way most of the kindest things in the world do their work freely, without expectation, without account. There is a relief in being on the receiving end of that kind of kindness. The relief is that you do not have to earn it. The relief is that you do not have to earn the right to it. The relief is that it does not stop when you stop being lovable. The bed is not going to stop being a bed because you are tired. The blanket is not going to stop being warm because you are tired. The room is not going to stop being a room because you are tired. They are with you regardless of whether you are at your best. They have always been with you regardless of whether you were at your best. This is a kind of reliability that is hard to find in human relationships. It is one of the reasons people sometimes feel safest with their own beds, with their own kitchens, with their own quiet rooms. The furniture does not get disappointed. The walls do not get frustrated. The lamp on the windowsill, somewhere across the room, does not turn its small, steady glow into a question. The objects in a familiar room offer a kind of unconditional companionship that human relationships, for all their richness, often cannot quite match. You have been a person, perhaps, who has sometimes leaned on this kind of companionship more than you have admitted. The kitchen at midnight, the small lamp by the bed, the quiet of your own apartment in the late hours before anyone else is awake. These places have been for a long time your most reliable confidants. They have not asked for explanations. They have not changed their treatment of you based on how the day went. They have remained themselves, exactly themselves, every time you have returned to them. The fact that you have been able to rely on these places is not a sign that you have failed to have human companionship. It is a sign that you have learned, somewhere along the way, how to find quiet kindness in the world. You have noticed that rooms can be on your side. You have noticed that small objects can keep you steady. You have noticed that the inside of your own home in the right hour can hold what nothing else has held. That noticing is a kind of intelligence, and it has been keeping you company for a long time without being thanked. You can thank it now silently if you want to. You do not have to. The room does not require your thanks. But the small inner gesture of gratitude toward the room, if it arises on its own, is a kind of completion. It is the inside of you closing a small circle. The room has held you. You have noticed that the room has held you. The circle is complete. There is nothing further required. Even the clearest water eventually releases its reflection back into the night, and even the deepest gratitude eventually settles into the simple silence of being where you are. Gratitude does not need to be expressed in words to be real. Gratitude can be a feeling in the chest, a small warmth, a quiet appreciation of the fact that you are inside a room that is being kind to you. That feeling is enough. The feeling is the gratitude. The feeling is the thanks. The feeling is the completion. The room receives the feeling without commentary, the way the lake receives the moon, the way the dark receives the small lamp, the way the night receives all of it. The room does not need to do anything with your gratitude. The room is not keeping score. The room is simply being a room, and being a room is enough, and your being in it, with whatever small feeling you happen to have toward it, is enough. There is, in the deepest part of these hours, a sense that everything has already been received, not just by the room, by something larger than the room, by the night itself, by the world outside the night, by the long, quiet history of all the nights that have ever held all the people who have ever lain in beds. You are part of that long history. You are not alone in it. You are simply the most recent person in a very long line of people who has been received by a quiet night while a quiet voice continued nearby. The line stretches back further than memory. The line stretches forward further than imagination. You are inside it. You belong to it. You are not the first person who has needed a night like this. You will not be the last. The night has been doing this for as long as there have been people who needed it to. You are not asking it for anything unusual. You are simply taking your place in the line. There is a moment, somewhere in the middle of a long ache, when the weight of it begins, almost imperceptibly, to change. Not to vanish, not to be resolved, only to change. It begins to weigh less because some hidden part of you has agreed to stop fighting the fact that it is here. The fighting was costing you more than the weight itself. The fighting was the heavier thing all along. This is a strange thing about feelings. They are rarely as heavy as our resistance to them. The feeling itself, when it is finally allowed to sit in the room with you, often turns out to be quieter than the long argument you have been having with it. The argument was loud. The argument was tiring. The argument used most of the daylight. The feeling underneath the argument was actually only ever asking to be let in. Some part of you here may already be loosening its grip on the argument it has been having all day. You do not have to know which part. You do not have to identify what the argument was about. You only have to notice, perhaps, that the inside of you is a little quieter now than it was when you first lay down. That quiet is not the absence of feeling. That quiet is what feelings sound like when they are no longer being argued with. Marcus Aurelius, who wrote to himself in the late hours of his own life by the light of small lamps in cold rooms, kept returning again and again to a single idea. The idea was that we do not have to assent to every impression that arises in us. He did not mean that we should suppress what we feel. He meant something gentler. He meant that we do not have to immediately reach for our feelings, name them, organize them, and decide what to do about them. We can let them be impressions passing across the surface of us without immediately turning them into projects. You have been turning your feelings into projects for a long time, perhaps. You have been treating each ache as something to be understood, each disappointment as something to be processed, each unspoken sentence as something to be either expressed or resolved. That is exhausting work, and in this room for the next while, none of it is required. The unspoken sentence is allowed to remain unspoken. The unmet hope is allowed to remain unmet. The conversation that did not go the way you wanted is allowed to remain the conversation that did not go the way you wanted. None of these things has to be repaired before you can rest. The repairing instinct is a kind instinct. It has served you in many ways, but it is also one of the things keeping you awake. And it is allowed here to take the night off. Not every inner truth requires perfect translation. This is one of the quietest realizations a person can have, and it changes a great deal once it has been felt. There are truths inside you that have never been said clearly and never will be, and that is not a flaw in your life. That is the nature of being a person. The inside of a human is always larger than the outside. There will always be more in you than you have words for. There will always be feelings that arrive in a shape that no sentence quite fits. The wish to be perfectly understood is a beautiful wish. It is also sometimes a quiet form of suffering. because perfect understanding is not actually available between any two people, anywhere, ever. The most loving relationship you will ever have will still contain pockets of you that the other person cannot fully reach. That is not a failure of love. That is the shape of being two separate inner worlds. The pockets are not a problem to be solved. They are simply where you live when you are not being read by anyone else. You are allowed to live in those pockets sometimes without trying to invite anyone else in. You are allowed to have small private weathers that no one else has ever known about. You are allowed to keep some of what you feel for yourself, not because it is shameful, not because it is unsayable, but simply because it is yours and it does not require an audience to be real. A great deal of the day for most of us is spent trying to make our inner weather visible to other people. Not always in obvious ways, sometimes only in small ways. The slight effort in our voice that says we are hoping to be heard, the slight shift in our face that says we would like, just briefly, to be seen. These small efforts are nothing to be ashamed of. They are deeply human. They are also, in their accumulated weight, tiring. And here, none of them are necessary. The room cannot see your face. The voice in the room is not watching your expression. The lamp behind the rain-softened window is not waiting for you to look brave. The night does not require your composure. There is no one here whose understanding of you needs to be managed. The work of being visible, which is so much of the work of being among people, can be set down for the duration of these hours. The hands, when they no longer need to gesture, become still in a particular way. Not stiff, not braced, just still. The way a leaf is still when the wind has moved on. The way a key is still when no one is waiting to use it. You may already feel that stillness in your hands, the fingers heavier than they were a few minutes ago, the palms a little warmer, the small, constant readiness in the muscles of the hand quietly stepping down. There is a quiet dignity in remaining gentle even after being misunderstood. This is a thing that does not get said often, because the world prefers to talk about assertion and standing up for yourself. Those things have their place. But there is also another kind of strength, less often praised, which is the strength of not hardening, the strength of being misunderstood and not closing. You have been misunderstood perhaps by people who love you. You have been misunderstood perhaps by people who do not. You have been misunderstood by yourself sometimes, when the inside of you moved faster than your ability to name it. And through all of that, some quiet part of you has continued to be gentle, even when no one was watching to notice the gentleness, even when the gentleness was returned with something less gentle. That quiet part of you is one of the most underrated things about you. It is also one of the things this room would like very softly to acknowledge. You did not have to remain gentle. There were many afternoons in which you could have closed. There were many conversations in which a less generous version of you would have been entirely understandable. And yet, somewhere underneath your tiredness, you kept finding a way back to a kind of softness. Not because you are saintly, not because you have it all figured out, simply because something inside you keeps preferring softness over hardness, even when softness costs more. That something inside you is not stupid. It is not naive. It is one of the wisest things about you. Hardness keeps the rain off for a while, but it also keeps everything else off. The gentleness you have continued to extend, even when not received in kind, is the same gentleness that lets you feel the warmth of the room around you right now. It is the same gentleness that lets you receive this voice in this hour in the way you are receiving it. The gentleness has not been wasted. It has been quietly keeping you available to the warmer parts of life, even on the colder days. You do not have to defend any of this. You do not have to make a case for your softness. You do not have to prove to yourself or to anyone else that your gentleness has been worth it. It has been. You may simply rest in it now. You may simply lie here and let the softness that has carried you through misunderstandings be a softness that carries you also into the rest of this hour. The breath has its own opinion about this. The breath, when it is given the chance, lengthens in the presence of softness. Not because softness is a technique, because softness is what the breath was always trying to be before the day made it shorter. The breath has been waiting for a room like this. The breath has been waiting for permission to be its own size again. You do not have to make the breath longer. You only have to notice that it is already lengthening on its own in the quiet between sentences. The lengthening is the body's small thank you for not being required to brace anymore. The lengthening is a sign that some interior negotiation has finished, and softness, for the moment, has won. The heart, when it has been carrying something for a long time, sometimes finds rest without resolution. This is one of the more surprising kinds of rest. It is not the rest that comes when a problem has been solved. It is not the rest that comes when an apology has finally arrived. It is the rest that comes when the heart stops insisting that resolution must come first. The heart sometimes just lays its head down beside the unresolved thing, the way an old dog lies down beside a closed door and rests there without complaint, because the resting is more important than the door opening. You may not be able to resolve the conversations that hurt this week. You may not be able to resolve the friendship that has felt thinner than it used to. You may not be able to resolve the family member who keeps not quite seeing you. None of these is required to be resolved before you can rest. The resting can happen alongside the unresolved. The resting does not betray the unresolved by happening. It only allows you to be a person who is still alive, still here, still capable of warmth, even while the unresolved things continue to be unresolved. This is one of the kindest permissions you can give yourself. The permission to rest without the conditions you have been placing on rest. The permission to be at peace, even briefly, with situations that have not become peaceful. The permission to lay your head down beside the closed door without needing the door to open before you do. The room around you in this moment is not asking the door to open either. The room is not asking anything of any of the people who have hurt you, or misunderstood you, or quietly disappointed you. The room is not even asking anything of you in relation to them. The room is simply a room with a bed in it, and a person in the bed, and a voice near the bed, and a small imagined lamp glowing somewhere in the dark beyond the window. That is all the room is asking to be, and it turns out that is enough. There is a softness spreading through the room now, less like a feeling and more like a fabric the color of low light, a fabric that does not weigh anything but covers everything. It covers the bed, it covers the floor, it covers the small uncertain places in the chest. It covers the day you have just finished. It does not erase any of it. It only covers it the way a sheet might be drawn over a sleeping animal. You may feel it on your chest. You may feel it across your shoulders. You may feel it under your hands. You may not feel it at all, and that is also fine. The fabric is doing its work whether or not you can sense it. The room knows what to do. The room has been doing this for as long as rooms have been holding sleeping people, which is to say, since before any of us was born. The mind, by this point, may have begun to wander. That is not a problem. The mind wandering is the mind beginning to release the grip it has been keeping all day on what it thinks it has to track. The mind is allowed to wander into rooms that have nothing to do with this script. The mind is allowed to drift to small memories that are not particularly important. The mind is allowed to circle back occasionally to a sentence it heard a few minutes ago, and then drift away again, like a small animal that returns to drink and then leaves. Whatever the mind is doing, it is doing it more slowly than it was earlier. The thoughts that arrive are arriving with more space between them. The space between thoughts is itself a kind of rest. You do not have to fill the space. You do not have to apologize for the space. The space is where the body actually settles. The space is where sleep, when it comes, will come from. The night continues without asking every question to become an answer. The questions are allowed to remain questions. The unfinished things are allowed to remain unfinished. The conversations that did not arrive at understanding are allowed to remain as they were when you walked away from them. None of that has to be resolved right now. None of that has to be resolved this week. None of that, perhaps, has to be resolved at all. Some things become quiet simply by being allowed to remain themselves, while you turn toward something gentler. The something gentler right now is this room. The something gentler right now is the slow rise and fall of your own breath, which has been doing its work without your supervision for many hours, and which will continue to do its work whether or not you remain awake long enough to notice it. The something gentler is the steady presence of a voice that will not leave when you stop listening, and will not feel betrayed by your drifting off. If you have begun, even slightly, to feel as though the words are coming from farther away than they were when this began, that is the body softening into the shape of sleep. The words are not moving away from you. You are settling deeper into the bed, and the words, like everything else in the room, are becoming a quieter presence on the edges of your awareness. They are not less real for being quieter. They are simply less demanding. Demand is the thing the body needed to be free of, more than anything else when you came here in these hours. Not noise exactly, not stimulation exactly. Demand, the constant small demand of being a person who has to keep responding to the world. That demand has lifted from your shoulders gradually across these last sentences without you having to do anything about it. It lifted because the room agreed not to make any of it. It lifted because there is no part of this hour that requires a response from you. You are off duty, not in the cheerful sense, in a quieter, older sense. Off duty in the way that a small bell falls silent when no one is left in the house to ring it. Off duty in the way that a door becomes a door again once everyone has gone to bed. Off duty in the way that a heart after a long day is finally allowed to be just a heart, not a manager of feelings, not a problem solver, not a translator. Just a heart beating in a chest, in a bed, inner room in the dark. The night continues without asking every question to become an answer. The dignity of remaining gentle, which we touched on earlier, has another quiet aspect to it, and the body will continue to settle as we move alongside it. The dignity of remaining gentle is, in part, the dignity of not requiring the world to apologize before you allow yourself to soften. Many of us were taught, somewhere along the way, that we should not relax until the situation has resolved itself, until the people who misunderstood us have come back to acknowledge the misunderstanding, until the conversation has been finished in the right way. That teaching is exhausting because situations almost never resolve themselves in the order we want them to. You are allowed to soften before the situation resolves. You are allowed to be at peace, even briefly, before any apology arrives. You are allowed to lie here in this room with these unresolved things still unresolved out in the world, and have your body release some of what it has been holding. The release is not a forgiveness. The release is not a forgetting. The release is simply the body taking back a portion of itself from the situations that have been borrowing it. The situations have been borrowing more of you than you realized. Each unresolved conversation has been holding a small piece of your nervous system in a slight state of readiness, in case the conversation should suddenly continue. Each unsaid sentence has been keeping a small piece of your throat slightly tightened, in case the sentence should suddenly be said. Each unmet hope has been keeping a small piece of your chest slightly braced, in case the hope should suddenly be tested. The cumulative effect of all of this borrowing has been the tiredness you came into bed with. The borrowing is being returned slowly in this room. The pieces are coming back. The throat is loosening. The chest is unbracing. The nervous system is allowing the situations to remain on the other side of the bedroom door without continuing to monitor them. None of this is being done with effort. The returning is happening because the room around you is not itself asking anything of you, and so the borrowed pieces have nothing to do but come home. When a piece of you comes home from a situation that has been borrowing it, you feel it as a small physical change, a small warming somewhere that had been slightly cool, a small loosening somewhere that had been slightly tight, a small heaviness in a limb that had been slightly braced. The body does not announce these changes. The body simply makes them quietly as the borrowed pieces find their way back. By the end of an hour like this, almost all of you has come home, and the strange thing is that you may not be able to point to the exact moment when any individual piece returned. This is one of the great mercies of sleep and of the hours that come before sleep. Sleep does not require an inventory. Sleep does not require a check-in. Sleep does not require you to know which parts of you were missing. Sleep simply receives you in whatever condition you arrive and quietly puts all the pieces back while you are not watching. By the time these hours are over, you are mostly assembled again. You are not as fragmented as you were in the late afternoon. You are, in some quiet way, returned. Marcus Aurelius, again, wrote to himself about the importance of being able to retire into the small fortress of yourself when the outside world had become too noisy. He did not mean to disappear from the world. He did not mean to refuse to engage with people. He meant that there was a quiet inner place, available to any person, that the outer world could not enter unless you let it. He meant that the inside of you was, in some real sense, yours, and that you had the right to spend time in it, alone, without being charged for the visit. You are in that quiet inner place right now. The outer world is on the other side of the window. The outer world has had its turn with you today. The outer world will have its turn with you again in time. But right now, the outer world is not invited. The room of you is closed to it. You are alone in the small fortress, which is not a fortress in the sense of weapons, but a fortress in the sense of being a place where the noise cannot follow. The noise has not followed. You may have noticed this. The noise of the day, which you brought into the bed with you, has gradually quieted. It is not gone, exactly. It is more that it has lost its grip on you. The noise is still somewhere, perhaps, in the back of your mind, but it has become a small, distant sound. The way traffic in a distant city becomes a small, distant sound at the right hour of the night. The noise is no longer at your front door. The noise is no longer in your room. The noise is no longer in your chest. The noise has gone back to wherever noise goes when it stops being needed. The small fortress is also full of small kindnesses. The kindness of being able to set your face down. The kindness of being able to set your shoulders down. The kindness of being able to set your hands down. The kindness of being able to set the small, invisible weight of being a person down. Each of these is a permission. Each of these is being granted slowly by the room and the dark and the voice and the hour. The hands, you may notice, have a particular relationship with rest. The hands are the part of your body that has been working most actively all day. Even when you have not been doing anything, obviously, the hands have been holding small objects, gesturing slightly, adjusting things, opening and closing in tiny ways in response to whatever was happening around you. The hands have been earning their rest more directly than most of your other parts, and the hands, when they finally get to rest, do so with a particular completeness. They become almost surprisingly heavy. They become almost surprisingly still. They become almost surprisingly content. If your hands are still now in some quiet position, they are being met by the rest they have been earning all day. They are not being asked to do anything. They are not being held in a position. They are simply resting in their own old way, with the small confidence of hands that know how to be off duty. You do not have to attend to the hands. You only have to allow them to remain off duty, which they will do gladly, because they have wanted to be off duty since the late afternoon. The breath has been doing its work all this time. The breath has not required any of your attention. The breath has not asked for anything. The breath has been the quiet companion of every sentence that has moved through this room. The steady, soft sound beneath all the other sounds. The rhythm that has held everything else in place. The breath does not know how important it has been. The breath is just being the breath, the way a stream just keeps being a stream, even when no one is listening to it. Most of what is keeping you safe right now is being done by your breath. The breath is keeping the body alive. The breath is keeping the body warm. The breath is keeping the body in its slow rhythm. The breath is, in some quieter way, keeping you company. The voice in the room is keeping company on the outside. The breath in your chest is keeping company on the inside. Both are reliable. Both are not going anywhere. Both are doing their work freely, without payment, without praise. You do not have to thank the breath. The breath is not waiting for thanks. The breath has been with you since the first second of your life. The breath will be with you in some form until the last. The breath does not require an inventory of its kindness. The breath simply continues, and the inside of you, when it senses the steadiness of the breath continuing, lets down another small piece of vigilance, because the body knows that as long as the breath is continuing, the most basic task of being alive is being taken care of. You have been alive all day. You have been alive all week. You have been alive for a long time. The work of being alive has been continuous, without breaks, since the first hour of your life. You have not had a single second off from being alive. That is an extraordinary thing when you sit with it for any length of time. It is also a tiring thing, in a quiet way that no one ever quite acknowledges. Being a person, even on the easiest days, is a long, continuous shift. This hour is a small mercy inside that long shift. The shift does not stop exactly, but the demands of the shift become almost nothing. The shift becomes simply lying here, breathing, being warm, being a body in a bed. That is the lightest version of the shift there is. That is the version that the long working hours of your life have been leaning toward. The version that the more demanding versions have been a kind of detour from. This light version of being a person is, in some quiet way, the truest version. This light version of being a person is what is left when everything else is set aside. You may feel, faintly, the lightness of this version of yourself, the version that does not have to do anything, the version that does not have to be anyone, the version that is simply present, warm, breathing. This version of you has been here all along, underneath the heavier versions. The heavier versions were not wrong, they were necessary. The day required them. But the heavier versions are not the deepest you. The deepest you is the lightness. The deepest you is what is here now. We were also speaking of the soft fabric of silence, the way silence has been spreading across the room like a kind of cloth, settling onto the bed, settling onto your body, covering everything without weighing on anything. That fabric has been getting softer the longer you have lain inside it. The fabric has been losing its texture the longer the room has been quiet. The fabric has been becoming almost indistinguishable from the air itself. This is what silence does when it is given enough time. It stops being a separate substance. It becomes the medium of the room. It becomes the thing the rest of the room is suspended in. It becomes the quietness that is so total that you do not notice it as quietness anymore. You notice it as simply the way the room is, the way the night is, the way the inside of you is. The silence has been integrated. The silence is the new normal of the room. When silence becomes the new normal, the inside of your mind has to work much less hard to maintain anything. The mind does not have to filter out noise. The mind does not have to track which sounds are important. The mind does not have to be ready for an interruption. The mind can finally rest in a place that does not require any of those services, and the mind, when it finally rests, looks a lot like sleep, because in some sense it already is. The thoughts you have been having by now are arriving farther apart from each other. The space between thoughts has become almost the main event. The thoughts themselves have become small interruptions of a larger quiet. The thoughts no longer pull you anywhere. The thoughts come and go like small fish in a pond, and the pond, which is the larger quiet, remains the actual condition of the room. You may, for stretches of seconds at a time, not be having any thoughts at all. You may not be noticing those stretches because there is nothing in them to notice, but they are happening. The mind is briefly empty, then briefly populated again, then briefly empty. The emptiness is increasing in proportion. The populating is decreasing in proportion. By the time you fall asleep, the populating will have stopped almost entirely, and the emptiness will have become continuous, and you will have crossed the small invisible line between drifting and dreaming. You do not have to know which side of the line you are on. The line does not require you to identify it. You can be on either side or on neither side, or moving slowly between them. The room is hospitable to all of these positions. The room does not ask. The voice does not ask. The night does not ask. There is no quiz at the end of this hour. There is no certificate to receive. There is only sleep, somewhere on the other side of these last sentences, waiting for you with the patience of a thing that has been waiting since the moment you first lay down. The night continues without asking every question to become an answer, and the unfinished things in your life are allowed here to remain unfinished. The unfinished things were never going to be finished in this hour. The unfinished things are not finishable on any single night. The unfinished things are the kind of work a person does slowly, over years, in small, unhurried increments, with many nights of rest scattered between the small movements forward. This evening is one of those nights of rest. In this slow stretch is one of the nights between the increments. In the slow hours is one of the soft pauses in the long, quiet labor of being a person. The pauses are as important as the labor. The pauses are where the labor becomes possible. The pauses are where the inside of you replenishes itself for the next small, unhurried step. The pauses are not laziness. The pauses are part of the work, even though they do not look like work. You are doing the work of the pause right now. You are not failing to make progress. You are not falling behind. You are inside the part of the work where the body has been given permission to slow down, where the mind has been given permission to wander, where the chest has been given permission to soften, where the eyes have been given permission to remain closed without effort. This is real work. This is the kind of work that makes all the other work possible. This is the kind of work that the day cannot do. There is a tide that returns to you in the late hours, very slowly, after the day has finally lowered its voice. It does not arrive with announcement. It does not arrive with a wave. It arrives the way the sea arrives, onto a quiet beach in the small hours of the night, when no one is watching, when the moon is doing its slow work overhead, when the world has stopped requiring anything of the water. The tide does not have to be invited. It does not have to be earned. It simply returns, because returning is what tides do, and the shore was always going to receive it. Something in you is like that shore. You may not have thought of yourself that way before, but there is a part of you that has been receiving everything quietly, all your life, the way a beach receives the sea, the good things, the small disappointments, the conversations that landed and the ones that did not, the seasons of being held and the seasons of being overlooked. All of it has been arriving at the inside of you, and the inside of you has been receiving all of it with a quiet patience that does not always get acknowledged. The shore is not unaffected by the tide. The shore is shaped by it. The lines you carry in your face, the small ways your hands rest in your lap when you are tired, the particular angle at which your shoulders settle when no one is watching are all the slow work of years of tide. You are a person who has been worn into a particular shape by what you have received. That shape is not a defect. That shape is the gentle evidence of having been alive among other people for as long as you have been. This late, the tide is coming in quietly, not as feeling, not as memory, just as a slow gathering of softness somewhere in the lower body, the legs becoming heavier than they were when you first lay down, the hips settling more fully into the mattress, the weight of the lower back finding the place where it can finally release. None of this is being directed. The tide is coming in, and you are the shore. And the shore does not have to do anything other than be a shore. Lao Tzu, who spoke about water as the most patient teacher, said that the softest things in the world overcome the hardest. He did not mean this as a slogan. He meant something practical and old. He meant that water, given enough time, shapes stone, not through force, but through patience. He meant that softness, when it is allowed to be itself for long enough, has a kind of strength that hard things cannot match. The river does not have to argue with the rock. The river simply has to keep being river, and the rock, over centuries, becomes the shape the river wants. You have been softer than you have given yourself credit for. You have been softer than the day has noticed. You have been softer in the small hours than you ever quite let yourself be in front of other people. And that softness, like water, has been doing its quiet work all along. It has been shaping you into someone who can lie down in a room like this, with a voice like this, and let go of a portion of the day that no one else even knew you were carrying. There are images, perhaps, that have already begun to return, small images from earlier in this hour. The lamp behind the rain-softened window, the lake holding the moon, the fabric of low light covering the bed. These images do not have to be remembered clearly. They are not a test. They are simply small pieces of weather that have been moving slowly through the room and that have begun to circle back, the way clouds in a long evening sky sometimes seem to drift past a second time, lower than before, less defined than before, more part of the background than the foreground. The returning of these images is not a structural trick. It is what happens naturally in the inside of a person who has been allowed to settle. The mind stops generating new things and begins, quietly, to revisit the things that have already passed through it. The revisiting is not analytical. It is not trying to figure anything out. It is simply the inside of you noticing, with mild affection, that certain images have been good company in the dark, and allowing them to be good company again, more softly than the first time. If the lamp behind the rain-softened window appears in your mind again, you do not have to do anything with it. You can simply let it glow. You can let the rain be rain. You can let the window be window. You can let the small warmth of the imagined light remain steady. the way a candle that someone left burning in a kitchen across a courtyard remains steady without needing to be observed. If the lake appears again, with the moon resting on its surface, you do not have to picture it sharply. The lake can be a vague suggestion. The moon can be a kind of soft brightness rather than a clear circle. The night around them can be more felt than seen. The whole image can blur while the feeling of the image remains. The feeling of the image is the part that matters anyway. The picture is only the door. Silence is becoming more spacious than explanation now. This is something the inside of you may have started to notice without being told. When you first lay down, the silence may have felt tight. It may have felt full of unsaid things. It may have had edges. As the minutes have passed, the silence has been changing. It has been losing its edges. It has been becoming more like a room than a wall, more like an open field than a closed door, more like a sky than a ceiling. That spaciousness is what silence becomes when you stop asking it to mean something. The silence around you is not loaded with implication anymore. The silence around you is not waiting for you to fill it. The silence around you is not measuring you or judging you or noticing how long it has been since you said anything useful. The silence around you is simply silence in its oldest and most generous form, which is the form that holds everything without commentary. Most explanation, even when it is well meant, presses on the inside of a person. Even kind explanation has weight. Even gentle explanation arrives with a small expectation that you will receive it, consider it, take it on board, perhaps modify yourself in light of it. There has been a great deal of explanation in your life lately, perhaps. People telling you what your situation means. People telling you what you should think about it. People telling you what they would do if they were you. None of it has been bad. All of it, accumulated, has been pressing on you in a small, constant way. Silence does not press. Silence has no opinion about what you should do. Silence has no theory about who you are. Silence simply continues, the way the sky continues over a city whether anyone is looking up or not. And in the company of silence, the inside of a person sometimes finds a kind of rest that explanation cannot give it. Presence is replacing effort now. You may have noticed this. The earlier part of this hour required perhaps a small effort of attention from you. You were listening. You were following along. You were curious to see where the voice was going. That was not bad effort. That was the natural effort of beginning. But effort, even gentle effort, has been quietly stepping aside, and presence has been moving into the space it leaves behind. Presence is not effort. Presence is simply being where you already are. You are already in the bed. You are already in the room. You are already in your body. There is no further place to arrive at. There is no further state to achieve. The presence that has been waiting for you all night, all week, all year is the presence of you being exactly where you are, without trying to be anywhere else. And that presence is becoming the dominant weather in this room. Presence has a particular weight to it. It is heavier than thinking. It is heavier than worrying. It is heavier than planning. The body, when it feels presence, sinks slightly because the body recognizes that there is no place to brace toward. There is no future moment to lean into. There is only this one and this one is large enough, and the body settles into it with the quiet relief of finally arriving somewhere it does not have to leave. You may notice the back of your head heavier in the pillow than it was when you first put it there. You may notice the small place where the shoulders meet the neck unclenching by another degree. You may notice the line of warmth that runs from the lower back into the hips, becoming a slow, steady warmth that you do not have to manage. None of these are things you are doing. They are things the body does in the company of presence, the way a small animal eases when it realizes it is in a safe burrow. The voice in this room has begun to slow too. You may not have noticed it consciously, but the sentences are arriving with a little more space between them. The pace of speaking is matching, slowly, the pace of your breathing. The voice is becoming a kind of breath itself, not a teacher, not a guide. A breath in the room beside your breath. Two breaths, very quietly, keeping each other company. There is a kind of companionship in matched breathing that the body recognizes from very early in life. Long before any of us had language, we were lying near other warm bodies whose breath was a steady, slow thing beside us. The body remembers that. The body softens into it without being asked. The voice in this room is not literally breathing, but the pace of it has begun to match the kind of rhythm that the body recognizes from the oldest, safest companionships. The eyelids, if they are still trying a little, may begin to stop trying, not in a sudden way. The eyelids have been holding themselves shut a little more deliberately than they need to, perhaps. They are allowed now to be heavier without your help. They are allowed to settle in their own weight. They are allowed to be just closed, without being held closed. The familiar things in your day, the small recurring images of a normal week, may begin to drift through your mind here, but with less weight than they usually carry. The face of someone you spoke to today, the texture of a moment at work, the brief tightness of a conversation that did not go well. These things may come and go through the inside of your mind. They are allowed to. They do not have to be pushed away. They do not have to be welcomed especially. They are simply allowed to drift through, the way a leaf drifts past a window at dusk, the way a small cloud drifts across a quiet sky. You will notice, perhaps, that these familiar things do not have the same charge they had earlier. The same memory that, at 5 in the afternoon, made your jaw clench is arriving now with less of that grip. The same name that, at 7 in the evening, made a small heat rise in your chest is arriving now with only a faint warmth, soft and passing. This is not denial. This is what happens to memories when the body around them has stopped bracing. The memory does not change. The bracing changes, and the memory, without anything to push against, becomes lighter. The body has been bracing all day, and that bracing has been silently amplifying everything you felt. Now that the bracing is gone, the same feelings are arriving in their actual size, which is smaller than they were in your day. The size of a feeling, when nothing is pushing against it, is often much more manageable than we expect. Most of what we have been struggling with has been struggle, not feeling. The hands by now may be fully still, the fingers softly curled or softly extended, or resting flat against the blanket, The thumbs not doing anything in particular, the palms a quiet temperature, the wrists a quiet weight, the lower arms heavier than the upper arms, the way they tend to be when the body has finished its day. None of this needs your attention. The hands have always known how to be at rest. They are simply doing what they know how to do, now that nothing is asking them to do anything else. The legs similarly have settled. The thighs warm and slightly outward, the knees slightly heavy, the calves softer than they were an hour ago, the ankles released, the feet in whatever position they are in, no longer being held in that position by effort. The feet are just feet in a bed at night. The whole body, traced from head to feet, is one long quiet weight. There are no zones that have to be activated. There are no muscles that have to be checked on. There is no internal supervisor walking through the rooms of the body making sure each part is doing its job. The supervisor has clocked out. The body is on its own time now. The body knows what to do with this time. It has done it before. It will do it again. It is doing it now. Every returning wave leaves the shore a little quieter than before. Each small return of breath is a wave that leaves you a little quieter. You are not counting them. You are not measuring them. You are simply being lived by them, which is what breath has always been, beneath the layer where we forget about it. Breath has been living us since the first hour we were here. It has never asked for our supervision. It has never required our gratitude. It has simply continued through every kind of weather a life can pass through. The wave of breath returns. The wave of breath returns. The shore of you receives it. The shore of you receives it. There is no other transaction happening in the room right now. There is no other commerce occurring. There is only the ancient slow exchange between breath and body, and the room around you holding both of them without interruption. You may begin to notice that the inside of your mind, when you try to look at it, is not quite as full as it usually is. The thoughts that arrive are smaller. The thoughts that arrive are softer at the edges. The thoughts that arrive are less interested in pulling you in any particular direction. It is as if the inside of your mind has agreed, by some quiet vote, to enter a slower season. This is one of the changes that always happens in the body before sleep, but that we rarely get to witness because we are usually unconscious by the time it completes. At this hour, perhaps, you are still aware enough to notice a portion of it. The way thinking begins to lose its handles. The way thoughts begin to arrive without being attached to other thoughts. The way the chain of association that usually pulls one thought into the next becomes looser, then thinner, then almost broken. That breaking is not damage. That breaking is the day finally releasing its grip on the inside of your mind. The day has been a long chain. The chain is now coming apart, link by link, very quietly, the way a paper chain in a kitchen at the end of a long party comes down piece by piece without anyone really watching. The pieces of the day are falling, not in a sad way, just falling, the way snow falls, the way leaves fall, the way light falls, in the last minutes before a candle goes out. Falling not because anything is wrong, but because falling is what these particular things do at this particular hour, when they are no longer being held up. You have been holding so much up for so long, most of it without realizing. The conversations you replayed, the small misunderstandings you carried in case you would need to address them, the feelings you packed neatly so that no one in your day would have to deal with their edges. All of it has been held up, somewhere inside the muscles of your shoulders and the small, soft place behind the ear and the gentle bracing of your jaw. And now, sentence by sentence, you have been quietly setting that holding down. You did not have to do it deliberately. The setting down happened on its own, the moment the room agreed not to demand it of you anymore. The way a person who has been holding a door open for a long time will instinctively let it close without thinking the moment they realize no one else is coming through. The door closing is not a rejection of anyone. The door closing is just the body responding to the simple fact that the work is over. The work of your day is over. The work of being available to other people is over. The work of being a person who has to be intelligible is over. None of these is over forever. They will return when the day returns. But for this stretch of hours, in this small lamp warmth of a room, all of it is genuinely, finally finished. The space around your body is a quieter space than the day's spaces were. You may notice the air around you holding a particular kind of stillness now, not absence of sound. The room may still have small sounds, a distant hum, a creak somewhere in the house, the sound of the rain, if it is still there. These small sounds are not breaking the stillness. They are inside the stillness, the way small fish are inside a pond. The pond is still, the fish move. The stillness is not disturbed by the moving. That is how this hour can hold whatever small disturbances arrive in it. A passing thought, a small twinge in the body, a brief flicker of memory. None of these disrupts the larger stillness. They live inside it. The stillness is not the absence of these things. The stillness is the larger container that holds them all without being changed by any of them. You are inside that stillness. The bed is inside that stillness. The room is inside that stillness. The night is inside that stillness. And underneath all of it, somewhere even larger than the night, there is something even more still, something that does not need to be named, something that has been holding everything together for as long as there have been things to be held. Every returning wave leaves the shore a little quieter than before. The tide we spoke of, the small returning sea against the shore of you, has been doing its slow work this whole time. Each wave a little smaller than the last. Each wave a little quieter than the last. Each wave leaving the shore a little more settled than it was before. You may have stopped noticing the waves as separate events. They have become a kind of background rhythm, the way a heartbeat becomes a background rhythm, the way breath becomes a background rhythm. The waves are simply happening. The shore is simply being shore. The arrangement is doing itself. Lao Tzu, who we mentioned, also wrote that the way is like an empty vessel, useful precisely because it is empty. He meant that emptiness, in certain contexts, is not lack. Emptiness is what makes use possible. A cup is useful because it has a hollow space. A room is useful because it has a hollow space. A breath is useful because it has a hollow space. And a person, perhaps, is useful to themselves, in part because they have, somewhere inside them, a hollow space, a small, still emptiness into which feelings and experiences can be received, considered, and eventually released. The hollow inside you is not a problem. The hollow inside you is the room that allows everything else to happen. Without the hollow, there would be nowhere for feelings to arrive. Without the hollow, there would be nowhere for breath to enter. Without the hollow, there would be nowhere for the quiet of this hour to settle. The hollow is not what is missing. The hollow is what is making everything else possible. You may notice the hollow now as a kind of soft openness somewhere in the center of you. Not a hunger, not an absence, just an openness. A small private room with very soft walls into which the night can move freely, in which the breath has all the space it needs, in which the slow, steady kindness of the hour can spread out without being constrained. You did not have to make the hollow. The hollow has always been there. The hollow is part of being a person. You have only allowed here the hollow to be unhidden for a while. There are many things we are not taught about being a person. One of them is that the hollow is friendly. The hollow is sometimes presented in life as something to be filled. The hollow is sometimes presented as a sign that you are not enough, that you are lacking, that you need more of something. None of that is the truth of the hollow. The hollow is simply how you are made. The hollow is the part of you that is open to the world, the part of you that can receive without being broken, the part of you that allows the larger holding to enter and rest. The larger holding has entered in this room. The larger holding is in the hollow with you right now. The larger holding has spread, soft and unhurried, into the part of you that is open. The larger holding is the room. The larger holding is the dark. The larger holding is the night. The larger holding is the voice that is keeping company on the edge of the bed. The larger holding is whatever it is that has been holding people through their nights since before there were rooms, since before there were beds, since before there were voices. The larger holding is older than all of those, and it has settled briefly into the hollow of you. This is a strange thing to talk about because it does not have a name. But the inside of you knows what it is, even when the words do not. The inside of you has felt it, perhaps, on certain quiet evenings, in certain unguarded moments, when the day became silent enough that something larger than the day was briefly perceptible. It is not religious in any necessary way. It does not require any particular belief. It is simply a fact about how the world is. There is a larger holding. The larger holding is here. You are inside it. You always have been. You have just not always had the room to notice it. You have the room to notice it now, or not. The noticing is optional. The holding does not require your noticing in order to continue. The holding has held you all your life, in every hour, including the hours in which you were not at all aware of it. The holding has held you through every disappointment, through every misunderstanding, through every conversation that did not go the way you wished. The holding has not failed once. The holding will not fail right now. The holding is one of the most reliable things about being alive. The candle by the chair has gone almost completely out. The light is now barely aglow. The warmth is now barely a warmth. The room has become darker around them, the way a room becomes darker when a candle has finished its work. The chair is still there. The chair will always be there. The chair has the patience of an old wooden thing that has been a chair for so long it has forgotten how to be anything else. You are like the chair, in a way. You have been a person for so long that you have forgotten how to be anything else. That is not a complaint. That is a kind of dignity. To have been a person for this many years, through this many days, through this many small moments of being almost heard and not quite, and to still be willing to lie down at the end of the day and rest, is a kind of long-haul gentleness that does not get acknowledged often. You have been gentle for a long time. Gentleness has been one of your steady habits. Even when it cost you, you kept choosing it. Even when it was not returned, you kept extending it. Even when the world made it difficult to be soft, you found small ways to be soft anyway. In the quiet hours, in the small private rooms of your own evenings, in the inside of yourself where no one was watching. That gentleness has not been a weakness. That gentleness has been one of the things that has kept you whole. The wholeness is here, in the bed, in the room, in the dark. You are whole right now, even though you may not feel whole during the day. The wholeness is the underlying condition. The wholeness has been temporarily hidden by the day's small fragmentations, the small ways in which you had to be slightly broken into different pieces for different conversations, for different roles, for different responsibilities. The pieces are coming back together now. The pieces have been returning all evening. The wholeness is reassembling, quietly, without effort, the way a small pile of scattered things will settle on its own if no one moves them for long enough. You did not have to reassemble yourself. The reassembling has been happening on its own. By the time you fall asleep, you will be more whole than you were when you got into bed. By the time you wake, you will be even more whole than you are right now. Sleep is a gentle assembler of the parts of a person. Sleep does its work in the dark while you are unconscious, and the work is mostly invisible. But the work is happening, and you can trust it. You can trust sleep. Sleep has been there for you every night of your life. Sleep has not asked anything of you in return. Sleep has not required your gratitude. Sleep has simply continued to be sleep, and to do the work of sleep, and to release you the hours after, in better shape than you were the hours before. Sleep is one of the most loyal things about being alive. Sleep is one of the most unconditional things about being alive. Sleep is, in some quiet sense, the largest small kindness in the world. The room has continued its slow softening this whole time. You may not have been tracking it. That is fine. The room does not require tracking. The room is softer now than it was when we first spoke of the lamp behind the rain-softened window. The room is softer than it was when we first spoke of the lake holding the moon. The room is softer than it was when we first spoke of the chair beside the fading candle. The softening has been compounding. The softening is now so complete that the room has very few edges left at all. A room with very few edges left is a good room to fall asleep in. A room with very few edges left does not catch anything. A room with very few edges left does not give the mind anything to attach to. A room with very few edges left simply receives the sleeping body, the way a wide field receives a small animal, the way a wide sky receives a small bird, the way a wide sea receives a small wave. The receiving is total. The receiving is without question. The receiving is what the room has been preparing to do since the first sentence of this hour. The room is receiving you now. There may be moments in the next few minutes when you cross over. There may be moments in which you are not entirely sure if you are awake or asleep. There may be moments in which the voice in the room becomes more dream than voice, more weather than words. All of this is welcome. All of this is exactly what this hour is for. You are doing nothing wrong by becoming uncertain about your own awareness. The uncertainty is the doorway. The uncertainty is the threshold. The uncertainty is the soft, slow stepping across that is the actual experience of falling asleep when you are present enough to notice it at all. Most people do not get to notice their own falling asleep. Most people are pulled into sleep so suddenly or fall into it so cleanly that the threshold itself goes unwitnessed. But occasionally, in an hour as slow as this one, a person can briefly catch the edge of the threshold. A person can briefly feel the change in the air right at the place where being awake becomes being asleep. It is one of the strangest and softest experiences a human can have. It is also one of the most quickly forgotten. The threshold does not let itself be remembered for long. If you happen to catch the edge of it in these hours, that is a small gift. If you do not catch it, that is also a small gift, because not catching it usually means you have already slipped across. Either way, the threshold has been crossed or is being crossed, and you are entering the soft country on the other side, where the day finally cannot reach you, where the unspoken sentences finally cannot pull at you, where the small, constant labor of being a person finally goes quiet for several hours. The soft country is here. You may already be in it. There is no border control. There is no document to show. There is no permission to ask for. The soft country has always been open to you. The soft country has been waiting for you since the moment you turned out the light. The soft country is, in some sense, your own. It belongs to you the way the inside of a body belongs to a body. The soft country has never charged you rent. The soft country has never asked for anything. The soft country is yours, and it will be yours every night for the rest of your life. There is, in the slow approach to sleep, a particular kind of quiet that does not exist at any other hour. It is not the quiet of empty rooms during the day. It is not the quiet of meditation, when the mind is being asked to be quiet. It is not the quiet of being alone, when the rest of the world is still active somewhere on the other side of the wall. It is the quiet of the world itself slowing down, of the body slowing down, of the mind slowing down, of the whole arrangement of things slowing down to the same low pace at the same time. It is a quiet that belongs only to the late hours, and only to those late hours in which a person has been allowed to genuinely settle. You are inside that quiet now. The quiet is not loud by definition, but it has its own kind of presence. You may notice it in the way the room feels. You may notice it in the way your body feels. You may notice it in the way your thoughts, what few of them remain, feel. There is a uniform softness to everything. There is a uniform slowness to everything. The whole inner and outer environment has agreed by some quiet consensus to be in the same low gear at the same time. This consensus is one of the most peaceful conditions a human being can be in. The peace is not coming from any one source. The peace is coming from the agreement of everything. The room agrees. The body agrees. The mind agrees. The night outside the room agrees. The voice in the room agrees. The breath agrees. The hands agree. The face agrees. There is no part of the situation that is in disagreement. And when nothing is in disagreement, there is nothing to resolve. And when there is nothing to resolve, there is, at last, nothing to do. Nothing to do. This is one of the rarest conditions of human life, and you are inside it. Nothing to do is not the same as boredom. Nothing to do is not the same as emptiness. Nothing to do is a positive state in which all the things that usually need to be done have, for this stretch of hours, retreated. The list is closed. The day is closed. The phone is quiet. The phone is no longer a doorway. The day is no longer a presence. The list has been put down in another room where it cannot reach you and where it has agreed to wait patiently until much later. In the meantime, you are simply here, simply warm, simply present, simply breathing, simply held by a room that has been holding people through their late hours for as long as the room has existed. There is nothing else required of you. There is nothing else asked of you. There is no one waiting for you to do the next thing. The next thing has been postponed indefinitely. The next thing has agreed to be the next thing later, not in this hour. This evening is yours. In this slow stretch is yours in a way that no other portion of the day quite is. In the slow hours is yours in the sense that no one else has any claim on it. This late is yours in the sense that no one can ask you to do anything inside of it. In the dark is yours in the sense that you are free for these hours to simply exist, without explanation, without translation, without performance. There is a particular quiet that arrives in a house after the voices have faded out of it. You know this quiet. You have been alone in a room after a long evening, after the guests have left, after the conversation has stopped echoing off the walls, and you have felt the way the room exhales, almost audibly, into the version of itself it was before anyone came. The chairs find their old positions. The lamps return to being only themselves. The kitchen, which a few hours ago was full of weather, becomes a kitchen again in its own quiet shape. The inside of you is becoming like that. The voices that have been moving through your day are fading. The conversations that have been echoing inside your head are losing volume. The kitchen of your mind is returning to being only a kitchen. The chair of your chest is returning to being only a chair. The lamp of your attention, somewhere in the inside of the room, is returning to being only a small soft glow that does not have to illuminate anything in particular. There is an old wooden chair, in your imagination if you would like there to be, beside a fading candle. The chair has been there for a long time. The candle has been burning for a long time. Neither of them needs to be looked at directly. The chair is simply doing the work of being a chair, which is to wait without expectation. The candle is simply doing the work of being a candle, which is to give off a small warmth and a small light without needing to be praised for either. The two of them have been keeping each other company for a long time, and they will keep keeping each other company after you have fallen asleep. You do not need to picture the chair clearly. You do not need to picture the candle clearly. You only need to know, somewhere in the back of the room of your mind, that there is a small, steady warmth still present, and that it is being attended to by a small, steady piece of furniture that has agreed long ago to be where it is for as long as anyone needs it. That arrangement is enough. The chair and the candle do not require your participation. Thich Nhat Hanh, who spoke often about the simple miracle of being able to sit and be aware of the breath, used to say that the practice was not to do anything in particular. The practice was to recognize that the breath was already breathing. The body was already being. The moment was already arriving. The sitting was not a discipline. The sitting was a slow noticing of what was already true. You are not practicing at this hour. You are not doing anything that requires practice. You are simply lying here while what is already true continues to be true. The breath is already breathing. The body is already being. The night is already night. The room is already room. None of these requires effort from you. None of these will stop if you stop paying attention. All of them will continue, with or without your supervision, into the slow, steady hours that follow, into a future you do not need to prepare for right now. The familiar thoughts that have been visiting you all evening are losing their edges. You may have noticed this. The same thought that, an hour ago, arrived with a sharp little hook is now arriving more like a soft round stone. The hook is gone. The shape of the thought is gentler. The thought no longer catches anything as it passes through. It simply passes through, and what is left behind it is the same quiet that was there before it arrived. This is what happens to thoughts when the body is no longer giving them anywhere to attach. The body has been the place where thoughts have been attaching all day. The body has been the soil. The body has been the wall. Now the soil is loosening. The wall is softening. The thoughts that try to attach find no surface to attach to. They drift on gently, the way smoke drifts away from a candle once it is no longer being fed. The candle is fading. You may notice this too. The light in your imagination, which has been a steady, small companion, is becoming a quieter version of itself. The flame is shorter than it was. The warmth around the flame is closer in. The dark around the flame is taking back very gently the territory it had earlier ceded. None of this is a loss. The candle is simply doing what candles do at the end of a long evening. It is becoming smaller on its own, without complaint. You are doing something similar. You are not becoming smaller in any negative sense. You are becoming smaller in the way that a candle becomes smaller. The territory of your attention is drawing closer in. The reach of your thinking is contracting towards something simpler. The number of things you can hold in your awareness at once is reducing naturally, without effort. This is the way a person comes into sleep. This is the way the day finishes being a day. There is nothing wrong with the smaller version of you that is emerging. The smaller version of you is the truer version, in a sense. The smaller version of you is the version that does not need to be impressive or articulate or available. The smaller version of you is the version that simply lies here and breathes and continues to be a person and does not have to be anything beyond that. This version of you has been with you all along, underneath the busier versions. It is just allowed, here, to come closer to the surface. Some of the words may have begun to repeat in your awareness, not the same words exactly, but a similar shape, a similar slowness, a a similar softness. This is on purpose, in a quiet way. Repetition is how the mind learns. It is safe to stop tracking new things. Repetition is how the mind learns. It is safe to let go. The mind has been waiting all evening for permission to stop tracking new things. The repetition gives it that permission, sentence by sentence, until the mind no longer feels it has to keep up. The mind, when it no longer has to keep up, does something kind for itself. It begins to stop generating new threads. It begins to stop reaching for the next sentence before the previous sentence has finished. It begins to rest inside whatever sentence is currently arriving. And in that resting, the gap between sentences widens, and the gap between thoughts widens, and in the widening, the door to sleep, which has been ajar all along, becomes more clearly visible. You do not have to walk toward the door. The door is the kind of door that comes to you. You simply have to be available to it. You are available. You have been available for a while now. The door has been moving closer with each slow breath, and you have not had to do anything about it. The door has its own pace. The door knows when to arrive. The door is not in a hurry. There is a soft repetition in the breath too. The breath has been doing the same shape for a while now. In, out, in, out. The shape of the breath is so familiar that the mind no longer has to attend to it. The shape of the breath has become wallpaper. The shape of the breath has become weather. The shape of the breath has become so much itself that it is no longer a separate event in your awareness. It is simply what is happening. When breath becomes wallpaper, the body has crossed into a quieter country. The body is no longer monitoring the breath. The body is no longer worried about whether the breath is correct. The body is just being a body with breath happening through it. And that is what sleep looks like from the inside, when you are still awake enough to notice it. You may be in that quiet country already. You may have been in it for some minutes without noticing. The exact moment of crossing over is rarely visible. People often think they are still awake long after they have begun to sleep. People often think they are nearly asleep when they are still firmly awake. The line is blurry on purpose. The line is blurry because the body does not want you to notice it. The body wants you to drift across it without comment. The candle by the chair has gone lower. The flame is smaller. The warmth is gentler. The light is barely a light anymore. It is more of a memory of light, a residue of light. A glow that is mostly heat now, with only the smallest visible color to it. The chair beside it is still patient. The chair beside it is still waiting for nothing in particular. The two of them, candle and chair, have settled into the kind of companionship that does not need anything to happen. The room around them is darker than it was. The dark is not threatening. The dark is the kind of dark that has been gathered by familiarity. The dark of a room that has been a room all evening. The dark of a place that knows you. The dark of a corner that has held your sleeping body many times before. There is no element of the unknown in this dark. This dark is the most known dark there is, because it is the dark that always comes when the day is finally finished, and it has come every night you have been alive. The body recognizes this dark. The body has been falling asleep into a dark like this since you were very small. The body, when it senses this kind of dark gathering around it, releases the last little bit of vigilance it has been holding. The last little bit, the smallest portion, the piece of attention that was still keeping an ear open in case anything required you. That piece is finally allowed to stand down. Once that piece stands down, the inner conversation begins to dissolve. The voices in your head, which have been talking to themselves quietly behind everything else, begin to lose their interlocutors. There is no one for them to talk to anymore. They are not being listened to. They are not being argued with. They are not being agreed with. They begin to drift apart and then to thin, and then to become a kind of murmur, and then to become indistinguishable from the soft sound of the room itself. The voices were tired. The voices have been talking all day. The voices have been working hard on your behalf, trying to make sense of things, trying to organize things, trying to anticipate things, trying to defend you from disappointments that may or may not arrive. The voices were doing their best. They were not your enemy. They were small, busy parts of you trying to keep you safe in a world that asks a great deal of a person. Now finally, the voices can rest. They have not been silenced. They have been released from duty. They will return later, or whenever you next need them. They will pick up where they left off. They will do their work again. But for this stretch of hours, they have been allowed to lay down their instruments and be quiet, the way an orchestra is allowed to be quiet between movements. You are between movements. The piece of music that is your day has finished its loud parts. The piece of music that is your night has not quite begun. There is a pause between them. The pause is what you're inside of right now. The pause has its own particular hush. The pause is allowed to be long. The inner conversation has become, by now, almost nothing. There may be small flickers of thought still. There may be small flashes of imagery still. But the long-running monologue that has accompanied you through the day is no longer running. It has gone quiet, the way a fountain in a courtyard goes quiet at night when whoever turns it off finally turns it off. The basin is still wet. The stones are still there. The fountain itself is no longer pushing water through itself. The basin is still wet. That is a good description of where you are. The day is still present in the sense that its residue is here, but the active pushing of water has stopped. The day is no longer generating new content. The day has finished. Whatever it left behind in the basin of your chest can simply sit there, slowly cooling, slowly settling, until the slow, long hours of rest rinse it gently away, or until the residue evaporates on its own. You do not have to drain the basin. You do not have to clean anything. You do not have to prepare yourself for the day that comes after. The day that comes after has its own arrangements. The day that comes after has its own basin, its own fountain, its own water. The day that comes after does not require any input from you right now. The only thing that requires anything from you right now is your willingness to lie here and let the basin cool. The warmth where the back of your head meets the pillow has its own small, steady presence now. You may notice it. You may not. It does not require noticing. The warmth is there whether you attend to it or not. The warmth is a small, kind companionship between your body and the bed. The bed has taken the shape of the back of your head. The pillow has cradled the weight you have placed in it. The blanket has agreed to be the temperature your body needed. These small, kind agreements between you and the furniture of your sleeping place are an old kind of relationship. The bed has known your body for a long time. The pillow has known your head for a long time. The blanket has known your weight for a long time. None of them needs instructions from you. They have been doing this for years. They will do it again now. There is nothing for you to arrange. There is nothing for you to monitor. There is nothing for you to remember to do. The furniture is doing the furniture's work. The room is doing the room's work. The night is doing the night's work. You are not in charge of any of it. You may have thought you were at certain points in your life. You are not. You are simply a person in a bed, in a room, under a blanket, in the middle of a night that is doing its job perfectly without you. The candle has burned down even further. The chair beside it is still there, the way certain steady things in your life have been there even when you did not notice them. There is a quality of long companionship in the room now. Not loud, not declared, just present. The kind of companionship that does not have to keep introducing itself. You have had moments of this kind of companionship in your life, perhaps. Moments where someone or something was simply present with you, without conversation, without effort, without any need to confirm what was happening between you. A grandparent at a kitchen table. A friend on a long drive when neither of you needed to speak. A dog sleeping at your feet on a Sunday afternoon. A book left open beside you while you stared out a window. These moments are some of the truest moments people ever have, even though they almost never get talked about. This hour is one of those moments. The voice in this room is not exactly a person, but it is something with that quality. Present without effort. Beside you without requirement. Continuing without needing to be confirmed. You have given the voice no instructions. The voice will not ask for any. The voice will keep being what it is until the room finally goes dark for you altogether. Only the smallest warmth remains where the light once was. The warmth, when the light has gone, is what stays. This is one of the oldest truths about candles and about people and about the small kind moments we have known. The visible part goes first. The light gives out. The flame becomes a single small point and then nothing. And the warmth remains briefly in the air around where the candle was. And then it too settles. And then there is only the room, in its before-candle quiet, the way the room was when no candle had yet been lit. The inside of you is in that quiet now. The visible part of your day has gone. The bright work of being a person is finished. What remains is the warmth of having been here, having tried, having continued, having shown up in all the small ways the day required. The warmth of your effort is still in the room. It will still be in the room when you sleep. It will gently settle into the temperature of the night around you, and it will be part of what the night holds on your behalf while you rest. There is a particular gentleness available in these last few minutes of awareness that is hard to access at any other time. It is the gentleness that comes when the inside of a person is no longer being asked to defend itself. The defenses have come down, not because they were attacked, but because nothing has been pushing on them for long enough that they simply forgot to stay up. The defenses, when they are not needed, become small folded things set quietly to one side, no longer occupying space inside the chest. The chest, with the defenses set aside, is so much larger than the chest you walked around in today. The chest of a person who has stopped defending is one of the most spacious places in the world. There is room in there for almost anything. There is room for the day. There is room for what the day did not give you. There is room for what you almost said. There is room for what you wish someone had said back. There is room for all of it, without it being a problem, because the chest is no longer trying to keep any of it out. You may notice that the chest feels physically wider now. The collarbones a little farther apart, the lower ribs a little farther down, the space between the chest and the back of the body a little more inhabited. None of this is something you arranged. The body simply opens on its own in the company of permission. Only the smallest warmth remains where the light once was. The house is quiet now, the inner house, the house of you. The voices that were moving through it earlier have settled. The small busy rooms of the mind have gone soft. The kitchen of the chest, where so much of the day's small weather had gathered, has cooled. The hallway between thought and feeling, which is so often crowded in the daytime, is empty of traffic. The whole inner house has gone into the version of itself that it only is during the deepest hours. You may know this version of the inner house from other late nights. The way certain rooms in you only come forward at certain hours. The way certain quieter parts of yourself only emerge when nothing else is asking for your attention. The way a particular small softness in the chest only becomes available when the rest of the day's structures have finally let go. These quieter parts of you are some of the truest things about you. They are not on display during the day. They live in the late hours, in the quiet hours, in the hours like this one. Thich Nhat Hanh wrote that the present moment is always available and is always enough, but that we usually do not have the room to notice it. He did not mean that the present moment is shining brightly all the time, asking to be seen. He meant something gentler. He meant that the present moment is simply there. The way the floor is there, the way the air is there, the way the sky is there. The present moment is one of the most reliable companions a person can have. The present moment never goes anywhere. The present moment is here right now, and was here a moment ago, and will be here in a moment. You are in a present moment that is exceptionally hospitable. This is not always true of present moments. Many present moments are crowded. Many present moments are loud. Many present moments are demanding. This present moment, the one you are inside of right now, is one of the more spacious present moments you have been in for a while. There is room in it. There is patience in it. There is silence around the edges of it. The present moment is being a kind of room, and the room is being a kind of hour, and the hour is being a kind of night, and the night is being a kind of larger quietness, and all of them are nested inside each other in a way that lets you rest deeply. You can rest in any one of these layers. You can rest in the moment. You can rest in the room. You can rest in the hour. You can rest in the night. You can rest in the larger quietness. There is no preferred layer. The layers all hold you. The layers do not compete with each other for your attention. They are arranged peacefully, the way a series of nested cups can be arranged peacefully, each one supporting the next without strain. The familiar thoughts, which we mentioned earlier as losing their sharp edges, have continued their slow softening. The same thoughts that arrived earlier with hooks have by now become almost weather. The thoughts are not gone. The thoughts will not be gone. The thoughts may continue to arrive throughout the night in the way that thoughts always do. But the thoughts have stopped catching anything. The thoughts have stopped pulling you anywhere. The thoughts have become simply the background texture of the inside of your mind, the way clouds are the background texture of the inside of a sky. You can look at the clouds when they pass through you with the same patient detachment that you might look at clouds in a real sky on a slow afternoon. You can notice them or not notice them. You can name them or not name them. You can let them pass or attempt to follow them, but they will pass anyway, because passing is what they do. The thoughts are like the clouds in this sense. They are made of the same kind of substance. They have the same kind of trajectory. They have the same kind of indifference to your interest in them. When you stop trying to make the thoughts mean anything, they relax. When they relax, you relax. When you relax, the room relaxes. The relaxing is mutual, almost circular. The relaxing builds on itself. The relaxing is what has been happening for many minutes now, slowly, without you having to manage it. You may not be able to point to the exact moment when the relaxing began. The relaxing is not the kind of thing that has a clear beginning. The relaxing is more like a slow tide than like a discrete event. The relaxing has been arriving in small returning waves since the first sentence. The gentle repetition we spoke of, the way certain sentences and images have circled back through this hour, has been part of how the relaxing has been arriving. The repetition is not for the listener's intellect. The repetition is for the listener's body. The body trusts what it has heard before. The body settles into rhythms it has encountered earlier in the same room. The body recognizes the second pass of an image and lets down a small additional layer of vigilance, because the body now knows that the room is the kind of room in which familiar things return. When familiar things return, the body knows it is safe to stop predicting. When the body stops predicting, sleep becomes available. Sleep needs the body to stop predicting. Sleep cannot enter a body that is still trying to anticipate what comes next. So the gentle return of images and ideas all evening has been a slow lullaby to the predictive machinery of the body. The predictive machinery has been stepping down and stepping down and stepping down. By now, it is mostly off-duty. It is allowed to be off-duty. It is the off-duty machinery that lets sleep finally arrive. The arrival of sleep is unhurried in this room. The arrival of sleep is a slow river. The arrival of sleep is a soft tide. The arrival of sleep is gentle weather that has been moving toward you for hours, and that is now very close, perhaps already touching the outer edges of your awareness. You do not have to greet it. You do not have to invite it. Sleep does not require an invitation from the conscious part of you. Sleep makes its own way in, the way mist makes its own way into a room, the way warmth makes its own way into a body, the way the slow, soft dark makes its own way into a night. The eyes are at rest. The breath is at rest. The hands are at rest. The legs are at rest. The chest is open and easy. The shoulders are low. The jaw is unclenched. The forehead is smooth. The small place where the shoulders meet the neck, which carries so much in the daytime, is finally not carrying anything. The neck itself is held by the pillow, not by the muscles around it. The body is supported by the bed in such a complete way that almost no muscle is doing any holding at all. This is what total physical surrender to the bed looks like. It does not look like collapse. It does not look like exhaustion. It looks like a slow, easy settling in which every part of the body has agreed to let the mattress do the work that the muscles were doing during the day. The muscles have not gone away. The muscles are still there. The muscles are simply off shift. The mattress is on shift. The bed has clocked in. The body has clocked out. There is a quiet trust between a body and its bed that develops over years of nights together. The body trusts that the bed will continue to be a bed. The bed trusts that the body will continue to be a body. Neither of them has ever broken the agreement. Every night the body has lain down, the bed has been there. Every night the bed has been there. The body has eventually rested. The agreement has been kept perfectly for as many nights as you have been sleeping. That agreement is being kept right now. The bed is holding you. You are letting the bed hold you. Neither of you is in disagreement about what is supposed to happen. The arrangement is functioning the way it has always functioned. The arrangement has the smooth, steady reliability of a long old partnership. The arrangement does not need any external help. The arrangement does not need any internal monitoring. The arrangement is simply doing its work while you and the bed both rest inside of it. The room around the arrangement is doing its own quiet work. The walls are being walls, the ceiling is being ceiling, the floor under the bed is being floor, the window somewhere across the room is being window. The dark outside the window is being dark. All of these are reliable. All of these will continue to be themselves through the night. None of them will require any maintenance from you. None of them will require any attention from you. They have been doing their work since before you came in, and they will keep doing their work after you have fallen asleep. You are surrounded by reliability. You are inside a system of reliable things. The bed is reliable. The room is reliable. The dark is reliable. The breath is reliable. The slow, soft passage of time is reliable. Everything around you and inside of you is doing what it has always done, in the order it has always done it. There is nothing strange happening. There is nothing unusual happening. There is only the most ordinary of all human experiences, the experience of a person settling into sleep in a quiet room at a late hour. The voice in the room is continuing, although the voice may sound slightly different to you now. The voice may sound farther away. The voice may sound nearer than it was. The voice may sound like it has merged slightly with the texture of the room. All of these are normal. The voice has not changed. Your relationship to the voice has changed. You are receiving the voice from a different layer of awareness than you were receiving it from at the start. The voice is still being the voice. You are simply listening from somewhere deeper inside yourself. The deeper inside yourself is a good place to listen from. The deeper inside yourself is the place where the body's wisdom lives. The deeper inside yourself is the place where the older, slower parts of you have been waiting for the chance to come forward. The deeper inside yourself is where sleep is gathered. The deeper inside yourself is where the threshold of unconsciousness is located. You have been moving toward it gently throughout this hour. You may already have reached its outer edge. If you have reached the outer edge of the threshold, you may notice, faintly, that some part of you has begun to be elsewhere. Some part of your awareness has begun to drift into a different kind of perception. Some part of the inside of you has begun to be in a place that is not quite a place. This is the early architecture of sleep. This is the first soft outline of the country you are about to fully enter. There is nothing to do here. You are simply moving through it, the way a person moves through a soft mist that does not require any decisions from them. You may already be partially asleep. That is fine. The voice will continue without requiring that you be fully awake. The voice will continue with the same patience it has had all hour. The voice is not going to leave when you stop responding. The voice is not going to be hurt that you stopped following. The voice was always going to do this for you until you were no longer in need of it, until you had passed into the place where voices cannot follow. That place is not far. That place may already be folding itself around the edges of your awareness. That place is the gentlest country there is. That place asks for nothing. That place gives you, every time you enter it, a quiet that the day does not contain. That place restores you slowly, without your supervision, while you are not watching. That place is, in the deepest sense, your most reliable home. You're going home right now, not to a place in the world, to the deeper place that has always been yours, the place you return to every night, the place that has been waiting for you since you first opened your eyes today, the place that has been waiting for you since you were small, the place that does not change no matter what has happened in the day, no matter how the conversations went, no matter how often you were heard or not heard. The rain is somewhere on the other side of the window still, though you may have stopped noticing it for a while. The lamp behind the rain-softened window is still there in the imagination of the room, though its light is barely a light anymore. It is more of a glow against the dark. It is more of a memory of glow. It is the warmth that remains after light has finished being light. You may have come into this hour wishing for some kind of understanding, wishing for the day to have made sense, wishing for the people in your life to have heard you a little more clearly, wishing for a sentence somewhere to have landed differently than it did. Those wishes were not wrong. They were not small. They were not ungrateful. They were simply human, and they came with you into the bed because they came with you into the whole evening, and there was no door between the evening and the bed. What has happened gently across these many minutes is that those wishes have changed shape, not gone, not been answered, just changed shape. They are no longer pulling on you the way they were when you first lay down. They are no longer sitting up in your chest with their elbows out. They have settled into the soft floor of the room of you, and they are resting there now, the way small animals rest at the foot of a bed when the household goes to sleep. They are still here. They are simply no longer in charge of the room. Feeling understood, you may begin to notice, no longer depends entirely upon words. There is a way that you have, in these last sentences, been quietly understood by something that has not said a single thing about your specific situation. The voice in the room knows nothing about your life. The voice in the room has never heard your name. The voice in the room has not been told a single detail about who hurt you, who failed to listen, who answered when you were hoping to be heard. And yet, somewhere in the inside of you, you may feel that something has been understood after all. Not by the voice, by the night itself, by the room itself, by the fact of being a person lying in a bed alongside a voice that has agreed to be alongside you. John O'Donohue, who wrote about thresholds with the kind of slow attention that thresholds invite, said that we live always at the edge of a great kindness that we do not see most of the time. He meant a kindness woven into the world itself, not a kindness that has to be earned, not a kindness that has to be requested, a kindness that simply waits, the way air waits, the way ground waits, the way evening waits to become night. You have been at the edge of that kindness all evening. You may not have noticed when you crossed into it. There is no clear line. But somewhere in these last sentences, the room you are inside has been closer to that kindness than the rooms you spent your day in. And the warmth you may feel in your chest right now, the small, soft warmth that does not seem to belong to any particular thought, is the warmth of being inside a kindness that does not require explanation. The opening image of this hour, the lamp behind the rain-softened window, returns one more time, more quietly than before. It is no longer something to picture. It is no longer something to admire. It is simply a small known shape, somewhere in the back of the room, doing its small known thing. The lamp does not need to be looked at. The window does not need to be approached. The rain does not need to be heard. They are all simply there, doing what they have been doing all evening, the way certain quiet companions in a life simply continue to be there without needing to be addressed.